A joyful cheer echoes through the city streets as someone celebrates the end of their exams. Click, clack. A teacher walks up the stairs, advising her appreciative students to head home early. Raise. She lifts her phone, her eyes lighting up as she spots an exclusive new release of a romance novel. Later that night, she lies in bed with her laptop, growing increasingly frustrated by the new chapter's delay. Brushing off her impatience, she decides a true fangirl would just reread the entire series with a beer. She begins her reread, recalling how the story centers on a femme fatale heroine juggling the three most handsome men in the Empire. The first two handsome suitors are introduced, the youngest duke and the powerful master of the Tower of Magic. The third and final suitor, a refined man with blonde hair, makes his appearance. She momentarily shrugs off the fictional drama, thinking it has nothing to do with her. Chua. The novel's three stunning male leads are shown in a dramatic, sweeping pose. Wah. Slam. 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 She erupts in a comical tantrum, demanding the author return and continue the story. The novel's scene plays out, where a man gently asks the heroine to call him by his name instead of his title. He tenderly takes the heroine's hand, gazing at her under the bright moonlight. His intense, focused gaze lingers on her. Bidum, bidum. A charming smile plays on his lips as his heart beats faster. Badum, badum. Just as he holds her hand, a sharp voice suddenly commands him to let her go. The blushing heroine looks toward the voice, softly saying the name, Kenneth. Kenneth confronts his rival, questioning if his actions are against the rules. As they argue, a third man named Arwen playfully intervenes, declaring that if the rules are gone, he can do as he pleases. Grin. The narrative confirms Arwen Hebrim has suddenly barged in between them. The heroine, Ibelin, reflects that while Arwen often appears boyish, he becomes a true man when he's with her. Gulp. Back in reality, the reader anxiously taps on her keyboard, pleading for the author to post the next episode. Dizzy. Her hands suddenly begin to tremble as a strange spell of dizziness overtakes her. Her vision grows cloudy as she clutches her head, wondering if she's just overworked. She awakens in an unfamiliar, lavish room, wondering if she's dreaming and shocked to see text floating before her. A message formally welcomes her into the world of the novel, The Flower of the Beast. Confused, she rushes to a mirror and sees a stranger's face, flashing back to her original identity as 25-year-old Kim Hyejung. Gasp! She stares at the reflection in utter horror, screaming as she realizes the strange girl is her. After a brief attempt to calm herself, she collapses to the floor, completely overwhelmed by panicked screaming. Wah! Her frantic cries alert the household staff, and a maid urgently sends someone to fetch the master. An anxious couple rushes in, and her new father calls out her name, Latte, while demanding to know what is wrong. A nanny bursts in with a baby version of Latte, who points at the couple, confusing everyone as the night settles in with a sniffle. After finally calming down, she meticulously begins writing down every character detail she can remember, identifying herself as Latte Ectri and listing the heroine and three male leads. An hour into her task, she clutches her throbbing head, frustrated by her own terrible memory. Tap tap. Trying to deny reality, she insists her memory can't be this bad after having read the novel 4 times. She finally recalls her unfortunate role, Latte, the villainous supporting character who exists solely to make the heroine Ibelin shine brighter. A vague memory surfaces of one of the male leads laughing, commenting on how a woman is different from what he expected. Creak. Shaking off the random thought, she opens the door, having come to terms with her new situation. She decides to embrace her new life, enjoying the simple pleasures of being cared for and eating well. Over time, she gradually becomes familiar with her new home and the people living in it. The narrator reveals it took a full month before she could look at her own reflection without being startled. A coachman formally addresses her as Miss Latte Ectri, inviting her to get in. Now fully embracing her new life, a happy and beautifully dressed Latte steps toward a carriage. The camera lingers on the flowing fabric and intricate design of her lovely pink gown. Years later, a poised young woman, Latte turns and responds with a simple yes. In a cute fourth-wall break, a teary-eyed Latte begs the reader to continue to the next episode. She reflects that, while she hasn't forgotten her past, she has finally accepted her new life inside the novel. The official title card is revealed, Miss Not-So Sidekick. Dare. Peeking from her covers, Latte suddenly bursts with determination, deciding to increase her screen time rather than fade away quietly. She fantasizes about a wild plan to gain relevance, manically dousing Ibelin with juice while deciding it's better than being ignored. A young woman with blonde hair fantasizes about being adored by 3 handsome men. She begins a determined search for the male lead, following sounds through a castle until a final rattle stops her. Her frustration boils over into a desperate, distorted scream for the missing male lead. The narrator explains that a firm, uncrossable wall exists between the supporting character, Latte, and the male leads she seeks. Remembering a past encounter, Latte feels a surge of hope that she will finally meet them today. A rustle in the bushes startles Latte, who excitedly turns, wondering if it could be the crown prince. Peeking through the leaves, she spots something chubby and wonders what it could be. She discovers the source of the noise is just a small, white rabbit staring back at her silently. Latte thoughtfully lifts the small rabbit to get a closer look. Another sudden rustle behind her makes her jump in surprise. She turns to find the rabbit speaking to her, leaving her utterly bewildered. Crying, Latte embraces the animal, comically calling it Crown Prince Rabbit number 181. As the sun sets, she reflects that her day-long search in the garden only resulted in meeting many rabbits. The scene shifts to a drill hall, where a loud bang echoes from within. The relentless sound of banging continues, showing flashes of intense physical training. Startled by the clanking, Latte peeks into the drill hall but realizes there's nothing for her there either. She is suddenly overwhelmed by the heat and sight of intensely muscular men training. She panics at the sight of the men's enormous muscles. At sunset, Latte recalls watching muscles all day, leaving her feeling completely drained by the intense energy. Despite her setbacks, Latte walks through a noisy town, determined not to give up on her quest. As Latte plans to put herself in danger to attract a male lead, a sudden shout warns her to watch out. A thug with a knife angrily shoves Latte aside for blocking his path. Terrified on the ground, Latte stammers an apology as a heavy boot presses down beside her. A large man named Galikeles Bluebird looms over Latte, accusing her of seeking a duel while she cries and pleads with him to listen. Accepting her fate, Latte braces for impact and bids the world a dramatic farewell. Just as she gives up, a voice asks if she is all right, causing her to glance up in surprise. Her heart pounds as she sees her rescuer's back, realizing who he might be. A knight from her own household advises Latte to leave, warning her that the area is dangerous. The knight questions how she wandered so far, mentioning that her master is worried. Latte recalls her father's furious outburst, scolding her for sneaking out to dangerous places. She laments that, as a mere supporting character, the world's story prevents her from ever meeting the male leads. Filled with renewed ambition, Latte tearfully compares finding a male lead to a rare stroke of luck. Gazing out her window, Latte reflects that 10 years have passed since she came to this world. She laughs while daydreaming that the handsome male leads must look as beautiful as the clouds. A pigeon abruptly lands on her head with a flap of its wings, startling her. Latte realizes it's a carrier pigeon and gently scolds it for its noisy arrival. She reads a letter congratulating her on her novel's success and asking to discuss her next work. Holding her book, The Various Situations of the Imperial Knights, Latte reflects that after 10 years, she's seen no sign of the male leads. She proudly presents her book, acknowledging it as a splendid achievement even without meeting her targets. Despite her success, Latte feels her spirit fading after so many failed attempts. Latte perks up, overhearing 2 women passionately debating the romantic potential of male characters, and realizes with a shock that they are just like her old self. A vision of her past self, a fiery BL author, appears behind a stunned Latte, declaring a new resolve to write BL novels. The knight's voice echoes in her mind, reminding her that comments give strength to an author. Inspired, Latte reaches for a fresh stack of paper. She grabs a large quill pen, ready to write with newfound purpose. With intense focus, Latte begins writing furiously, filling page after page. She notes with satisfaction that her constant writing has made her an expert at shorthand. Outside a bookstore, 2 fans excitedly celebrate having pre-purchased her latest work. A shopkeeper apologizes to an eager customer, explaining that the popular new Beamore novel is still being printed. Outside the bookstore, 2 women argue over a book, while another overhears a rumor about a sequel. Latte smugly holds her book, enjoying a chilly breeze of satisfaction. The narrator explains her first work was a massive success, becoming #1 in the Bmore genre. Latte cackles maniacally while clutching piles of gold, having become incredibly wealthy by age 15. Her award-winning book is shown, as the narrator notes copies of The Wandering Knight Edwin still sell at high prices. A maid notices Latte smiling blissfully and asks what she's reading. The curious maid looks on with star-filled eyes. Latte recognizes the maid as Ursula, hides a letter, and nervously laughs, thinking her conservative father would disapprove of Bymore novels. Latte worries that the secret of her writing career would get out instantly if the gossipy Ursula knew. Ursula brightly asks Latte if she will be attending the upcoming tea party. Ursula reassures Latte they have plenty of time to prepare and offers to do her hair first. A swish, swa, S-W-A-A-A-A-A, as Ursula expertly brushes Latte's long, flowing hair. As Latte marvels at the beautiful result, thinking Ursula's skills are that of a true master. Contrasting her messy and styled hair, Latte internally declares that Ursula is the only one who can tame her curls. Swish. As Ursula finishes the hairstyle, Latte thinks she would be perfect if only she weren't such a blabbermouth. Latte beams, admiring her new look and declaring that she loves it. Latte gratefully tells Ursula she is the savior of her social life. As they discuss dresses, Ursula flatters Latte, who accepts the compliment with a smile. Ursula gives a playful wink, and though Latte knows it's just flattery, she can't bring herself to hate her, while Ursula suggests accessories. Latte looks stunning after being fully styled with jewelry and makeup. Latte smugly reflects that she looks far better than her past self, Kim Hye-jung, whose imagined face insults her makeup skills. Fully dressed and ready, Latte poses elegantly in her beautiful new gown. Latte dismisses her maid's well wishes, annoyed, but decides to walk since it's close and she has a guard, Sir Hans. Meanwhile, her father tearfully begs her to be safe, but she notes Sir Hans seems out of breath already. Sir Hans announces they've arrived at Count Olive's residence, and Latte observes that the 3-second walk has already winded him. Latte politely greets Lady Olive and Lady Ectry upon her arrival. A woman informs Latte that everything has been uneventful and asks how she has been. Latte thanks her hostess for the invitation and is politely shown to her seat. As a slice of cake slides onto the table, a woman named Kano greets Latte, who happily praises the dessert. Latte thanks Kano for saving her a piece of cake just as an announcement begins. Blink. Latte pauses mid-bite, confused by the sudden shift in atmosphere. A woman explains that they've all gathered to discuss Princess Rosalia's birthday banquet, scheduled in 2 weeks. Latte realizes the character names Olive and Canola are food-themed, then has a shocked reaction when she connects the dots to Americano and her own name, Latte. The woman announces that the esteemed Crown Prince Rondemio will be in attendance. While Latte internally mocks the unoriginality of the name Rondemio, Kano asks what she's thinking, and other women nod, having heard similar rumors about his name. Munch, munch. Latte continues eating, thinking she can't blame anyone for not seeing the mysterious prince, as she hasn't either. PFTTT Latte spits her drink in shock upon hearing it's Princess Rosalia's 17th birthday, a coming-of-age celebration. With pupils popping, Latte's eyes swirl in a spiral of dawning horror. She realizes with a jolt that she completely forgot about this pivotal event from the novel. Latte looks on with concern, as the other women begin to murmur about the possibilities the banquet holds. 2 ladies gossip excitedly about the prince's legendary handsomeness. One woman jokes that after seeing the prince, all other men will look like seafood by comparison. Whoa. Kano eagerly asks Lady Olive what the prince was like when she met him. Lady Olive swoons, declaring that his beauty is impossible to imagine and must be seen to be believed. Latte listens intently, trying to remember the novel's description of the Crown Prince. She recalls a passage describing his platinum blonde hair as being as radiant as sunlight. A blurry image of the prince appears as she remembers the novel describing Rondemio as a blonde-haired, blue-eyed man. Pondering what he will look like, Latte quickly decides she'll order a dress from the Itere salon. The other women chime in, mentioning their own reservations at the Eritare and Mir salons. As the conversation turns to dresses, a flush of excitement fills the air, and Latte muses that it's good they won't wear the same brands. Caught off guard, Latte stammers that she'll probably just go to Andre's shop when Kano asks what brand she'll be wearing. Latte recalls with a blush how she used to kill time with lukewarm reactions when her input was needed. Leaving the party, Latte and Lady Olive politely exchange goodbyes, both claiming to have had a wonderful time. Another guest flatters Lady Olive, asking for another invitation, as Latte notes that such flattery is necessary with the arrogant hostess. Flash Sir Hans laughs loudly, agreeing that it's enjoyable to talk with like-minded people, and Latte forces a laugh in agreement. Arriving home, Latte is greeted by her father, who asks if the tea party was fun. Latte confirms it was, but says she's tired and will go rest. Tap. Teehee. Once alone, Latte lets out a small, satisfied giggle. Ursula winks playfully, offering to style Latte's next outfit, but she firmly declines. Ursula asks if she should prepare a meal or bath, but with a flop, Latte dismisses her, wanting to sort her thoughts first. Latte grabs her head and screams, berating herself for not paying attention when she first read the novel. Plop. She collapses on the floor, annoyed that she only remembers one specific scene because she reread it so often. Staring at the ceiling, she reflects on how long it took for the story to reach this pivotal point. Urgh. She groans, dismissing the thought as a bad dream and thinking she must be hearing things. Munch, munch. She happily eats, contrasting her past life of being scolded with her current one of good food and wealth. She recalls the stress of her past life at age 25, dealing with her divorced parents, and feels no nostalgia for it. Now, with doting parents bestowing benevolence and abundance, she finds her peaceful life is almost boring. Thinking of her past self, she admits her previous life has too many troubling memories to ever be glorified. She muses that this new life is a gift, but laments her fate as a mere supporting character. She suddenly feels sorry for the many male extras sacrificed, just to make the main characters shine. Gazing at a grand castle, she realizes she can now witness the novel's events firsthand. While a publisher panics in the background, she puts on 3D glasses, thinking the next 10 days will be slow. Slide. Bang! Holding a box of popcorn, she enthusiastically offers to make some for the coming drama. Shake, shake. The next morning, Ursula wakes her, excitedly insisting they go buy a dress for the banquet. Wine, wine. Ursula passionately argues that Latte has to look her best for the event. Bidum, bidum. Ursula reveals it's for the crown prince, leaving Latte stunned and wondering how she knew. Ursula proudly declares herself a fashion aficionado, prompting Latte to realize all the servants know. She flatly refuses to buy a new dress. Ursula stares in shock at Latte's adamant refusal. Not buying, Ursula pleads with her puppy eyes, but Latte uses a hand mirror to reflect the attack. Ping, ping, ping. Undeterred, Ursula announces she's going to learn new makeup techniques, while Latte sighs at her persistence. Latte realizes Ursula is literally packing for a business trip just to prepare her for the banquet. Ursula returns after a week, just as Latte notes she has failed to make popcorn 3 times in her absence. Slam Ursula bursts through the door, dramatically announcing her return. Ursula is horrified to find Latte covered in soot from a popcorn-making disaster. Dash, push. Gah. Overwhelmed by Ursula's energy, Latte begs her to pick any accessories. Ursula and another maid named Lily discuss dresses, with Ursula pointing out the perfect one for Latte's fair skin. While 2 maids admire her updo, Latte groans that the corset is so tight she feels like she's going to die. The maids, with stars in their eyes, excitedly suggest adding red accents to the waist of her gown. Latte feels a pang of guilt, thinking the maids are going through so much trouble for a supporting character. The maids eagerly ask if Latte would like to see herself in the mirror. As the maids step aside, one notes her smile means the makeover was a success, but Latte remains skeptical. She reflects on the old saying that you can't change what you're born with. Seeing her breathtaking reflection, she wonders if that saying might be wrong after all. Her transformation reminds her of seeing a friend on her wedding day, looking almost unrecognizably beautiful. She touches her own cheek, whispering in awe that this is truly her. Feeling utterly confident, Latte strikes a pose, declaring herself so hot. Click, clack, click. She makes a grand entrance, descending the staircase. The household staff murmurs in astonishment at her glamorous new look. Latte nervously bids her mother farewell before hopping into the carriage and psyching herself up with a quiet, giddy up. The novel's main characters, Ibel and Dot and Crown Prince Rondemio de Helon, are formally introduced. The carriage pulls up to the magnificent palace, signaling their arrival at the banquet. An attendant formally announces Latte's entrance into the grand banquet hall. A familiar voice calls her name, and Latte turns to see Kano smiling warmly at her. Kano gushes over how beautiful Latte looks, and they happily exchange compliments on their outfits. As a clock chimes in the background, an announcer declares the grand entrance of Crown Prince Rondemio and Princess Roselia. Crown Prince Rondemio and Princess Roselia descend the grand staircase, capturing everyone's attention. Latte watches their approach, her expression one of focused anticipation. Drop. Her fan slips from her fingers as Latte gasps in awe at the Crown Prince's breathtaking appearance. Her mind reels with a single, overwhelming thought. This is crazy. Seeing Rondemio's face instantly triggers a specific memory from her past life. She recalls her friend gushing with excitement after meeting a handsome actor named Elfman. Her friend had been so starstruck she could only repeat how handsome he was, a reaction Latte now fully understands. Realizing she's having the same speechless reaction as her friend, Latte admits the Crown Prince is truly stunning. Fumble. Flustered, she questions if she and the prince are even the same species, wondering why she feels so overwhelmed. She comically contrasts Rondemio's appearance to a masterpiece of art and her own to a quick, clumsy sketch. Noticing Kano staring in utter shock, Latte dryly thinks her friend's eyes are about to pop out. Latte continues her assessment, admiring his tall frame, broad shoulders, and long legs. Murmur, observing how calmly he handles the intense stares. She credits his impressive composure to his role as the male lead. Latte lets out a sudden gasp of realization. Rondemio's expression suddenly shifts to one of shock, leaving Latte completely bewildered. Glow-popping on imaginary 3D glasses, Latte wonders why the Crown Prince is suddenly looking so shocked. Latte realizes Rondemio is staring, because the novel's heroine, Ibelin, is about to make her entrance. Flutter. Just as predicted, Ibelin appears, looking up from her book with a confused expression. Turn. As the pages of her book flutter, Rondemio watches in disbelief while Ibelin remains engrossed in her reading. Murmur. Other noble ladies stare and whisper in shock at Ibelin's seemingly rude behavior. She raises her head from her book, looking confused by the quiet mumbles rippling through the crowd. Latte's eyes narrow in recognition. This is the exact scene she remembers from the novel. Just as the story foretold, Rondemio approaches Ibelin, who looks up to meet his intense gaze. Latte confirms events are unfolding exactly as written, right down to Rondemio's next reaction, a dramatic sweep of his hair and a short laugh. She gets goosebumps, shocked that the scene is playing out with perfect accuracy. A sly grin spreads across her face as she realizes her knowledge of the novel makes her feel like a shaman predicting the future. Smirk. He strikes a dramatic pose that Latte finds childish. Yet she has to admit he still looks amazing doing it. Gring. She inwardly cringes at his pose, wondering how anyone else could possibly find it cool. Kiap. The other ladies, however, are completely captivated, swooning over his beauty and dramatic flair. Giving a mental thumbs up, Latte concedes that as the main character, he's an incredible guy. A puzzled Latte tries to recall what happens next in the scene. A new announcement rings out. The Emperor and Queen are now entering the hall. As the Emperor appears, Latte eagerly looks on, curious to see the parents responsible for Rondemio's genes. Bulge. Her eyes widen in disbelief as she gets a better look at the Emperor's physique. The Emperor is revealed to be a short, chubby man with a cheerful face. Not what she expected at all. Latte is left completely speechless, baffled by the genetic mystery before her. The Queen joins him, and Latte thinks they look less like royalty and more like a cute middle-aged neighborhood couple. Rubbing her eyes, Latte listens as the Emperor welcomes the guests to celebrate Roselia's 17th birthday. Latte notes the Emperor's commanding presence as he and the Queen invite everyone to enjoy the banquet. Turn. But as they look back toward the center of the room, they realize Rondemio has already vanished from sight. Latte observes the other ladies, who are all sighing dreamily after the prince's abrupt departure. The women murmur amongst themselves, wondering if they're dreaming, confessing they're already in love, and hoping to meet him again. As the hall fills with lovesick sighs, Latte wryly observes the drama and thinks she needs some popcorn. Gasping for air, Kano looks utterly lovesick, prompting Latte to think her friend has completely lost her mind. Looking at her friend's dazed expression, Latte thinks with pity that Kano has also fallen victim to the prince's charms. Kano asks if her heart is racing, and Latte, with a mischievous grin, plays along, confirming she feels faint just thinking about him. With tears in her eyes, Latte wishes Kano good luck, but warns her to get over her hopeless crush before she turns into a villain. Latte raises her glass, telling a dazed Kano to hold still as she proposes a toast to her friend's future self. She reasons that the Crown Prince would never reappear just for side characters like them. However, she recalls that according to the novel, Rondemio does appear again after a few key events. First, the heroine Ibelin must meet the second male lead, a duke named Kenneth. After that, Ibelin is destined to meet the third male lead, Arwen, Master of the Tower of Magic. The narrative confirms Ibelin meets Kenneth in a garden setting. It then specifies that her meeting with Arwen takes place in the streets of the capital. Latte concludes that the order of events will remain the same, but tries to remember the specific dates. She suddenly remembers that the crucial meeting takes place on the last day of the banquet. A brilliant idea strikes Latte as she excitedly decides to make popcorn for the upcoming drama. Kano asks if Latte is done drinking for the night, and she confirms she's had enough. As she looks across the room, Latte suddenly remembers she'd completely forgotten about Princess Roselia. Roselia blushes, thinking to herself with a huff that she and someone else have just made eye contact. Smile. She offers a gentle, radiant smile to the person she's looking at. Kano points in alarm as Latte gets a comical nosebleed, overwhelmed by Roselia's beauty. Latte reflects on the princess, thinking that even when someone is that beautiful, it doesn't matter, as Kenneth is a loser who only has eyes for the heroine. She recalls that in the novel, Roselia is extremely kind, and even becomes friends with Ibelin. Remembering the chaotic reader comments, Latte thinks if it were her, she'd have pulled Ibelin's hair out multiple times. Poll. Roselia thinks happily that if she laughs, Kenneth is sure to laugh with her. Latte watches on, internally questioning if anyone has ever seen a loser as pretty as Roselia. Admiring Roselia's dazzling presence, Latte thinks she has the aura of a girl group leader and wonders how captivating Kenneth must be to infatuate her. Feeling visually refreshed by all the beautiful people, Latte decides it's time for her to head home. Latte tells Kano she has to leave, confirming that her friend plans to stay for the rest of the night. She gives Kano false hope, encouraging her to enjoy the prince's return, while knowing he won't be back. Clitter, clatter. As the sun sets, Latte rides home in her carriage, in thoughtful silence. Musing that love is central to romance novels, she pities Kano before turning her thoughts to a more peaceful topic: how much money the novel might make. Chatter, chatter. Back home, a maid doing Latte's hair excitedly asks if it's true what they say about the prince. As the maid continues to chatter about his rumored beauty, Latte dryly confirms everything she says is true. Halt! The maid eagerly asks what kind of fling Latte had with the crown prince, shocking her. As she looks back at her mistress, the maid tries to finish her question, stammering about afar. The maid looks on, confused by Latte's non-reaction. Grab. She suddenly grabs Latte, demanding an explanation, but Latte finds her scary and makes a run for it. Dash. Snore. After a pleasant day, Latte sleeps soundly until the next morning, when she cheerfully descends the stairs, calling for someone named Defu. Gasp, the residence's chef, Defu, looks up in shock as Latte greets him. A flashback reveals the source of his fear: Latte's disastrous attempt to make popcorn last week, which resulted in a fiery crash. Defu apologizes for his shocked reaction, and Latte admits she can't really blame him. When Defu nervously asks why she's in the kitchen, Latte feels a sense of suspicion, seeing him as a scared mouse facing a cunning cat. Latte tries to promise things won't be as bad this time, but her words do little to comfort a deeply untrusting Defu. She strikes a confident pose, which is met with Defu's weary silence. Defu clarifies he wasn't implying she'd turn the kitchen into a dungeon, as Latte wonders why theaters can make popcorn so neatly. Latte cheerfully insists she'll figure it out, but her ominous laugh only deepens Defu's anxiety. Clasping her hands, she apologizes and begs him to believe she will use the kitchen properly this time. A single bead of sweat rolls down Defu's face as he stares in tormented resignation. He finally relents and says, "All right," prompting a joyful shout of thanks from Latte. Defu gives her one critical piece of advice: don't pour water into the hot oil, to which Latte scoffs dismissively. With eyes full of distrust, Defu internally questions her competence, thinking she just might be that foolish. Latte dramatically declares her transformation into a cooking genius, leaving DeFu utterly bewildered. Drop, drop. She carefully places kernels and butter into the pan as the oil begins to sizzle. Tap, tap. Latte excitedly watches the pan, declaring her preparation for making popcorn is perfect. Creak! She dramatically commands DeFu to open the lid while a caption clarifies that this is not a cooking comic. In a sudden fantasy sequence, Latte imagines herself as the star of a historical cooking drama. She holds her breath in anticipation, dreaming of the perfect, pure white popcorn about to be revealed. Back in reality, she stares in horror at a pan full of jet black, completely burnt kernels. Arga! A scream of utter failure echoes throughout the entire residence. Sob, sob. Latte wails over her disastrous attempt as a distressed DeFu looks on. She cries about the lack of a search engine to help her, prompting a sympathetic DeFu to question her intense need for popcorn. Sniffle? Wiping away a tear, Latte insists that popcorn is the default and necessary snack for all spectators. Desperate to stop the chaos, DeFu suggests an easier alternative, like dried fruit. After briefly considering the easier option, she slams her fist down, declaring that as an honorable spectator, it's popcorn or nothing. DeFu cautiously gets her attention, preparing to offer his professional opinion on her cooking failure. He suggests the problem might be the corn itself, but Latte says she has already tried various kinds. She is stunned by his suggestion to find a different seed, not understanding the concept. It finally dawns on her that there might be a specific type of corn exclusively for making popcorn. Realizing her mistake, a newly determined DeFu grabs Latte and insists they go to the marketplace at once. DeFu strikes a dashing pose and vows to escort her, causing Latte to marvel at his sudden handsome transformation. Bam! United in their mission for perfect popcorn, Latte and DeFu strike a determined pose together. At the market, a vendor shows them a type of corn, confirming it's different from the one they have at home. Another vendor eagerly promotes his corn, boasting that it's a sweet but pricey variety from the South. Overwhelmed with choices, Latte strikes a cool pose and impulsively decides to buy all the corn they have. Pop, pop, pop! Their mission is a success, as popcorn explodes in the pan, and Latte joyfully shouts that it's raining popcorn. She eagerly takes a crunchy bite, but her expression quickly sours as she realizes it doesn't taste good. With a generous smile, DeFu gently reminds her that she forgot to add salt. Nom, nom. After adding salt, she is overjoyed with the result and decides this miracle must be shared, much to DeFu's silent horror. Step, step. Her mission a success, she proudly carries a large basket of freshly made popcorn to share. Dash, as she runs through the hall, she surprises two maids by shoving a handful of popcorn into their mouths. The maids chew with puffed out cheeks, completely bewildered by the sudden and aggressive snack offering. Whoosh. Her chaotic snack distribution is cut short when a stern woman appears and scolds her for running gracelessly. Undeterred, she shoves popcorn into another person's mouth, boasting about her impartial snack distribution. Bam! Filled with a sense of accomplishment, Latte is thrilled when DeFu asks if they should make even more. Shake, shake. She wisely decides to call it a day, suddenly concerned about eating too much popcorn. She visualizes the trans fat and cholesterol in popcorn, resolving to wait for the banquet day to indulge. While taking notes, she briefly gives up on her diet, deciding it's fine if she's only calculating corn amounts. Just as she settles into a peaceful routine, a maid's voice calls out her name from off-screen. Clench. The maid gets uncomfortably close, intensely asking her if she's gained weight. Squeeze. As the maid aggressively tightens her corset, Latte gasps for air and tries to deny putting on weight. Droop. Struggling to breathe inside her dress frame, she miserably blames the addictive popcorn for her suffering. A fond flashback shows the entire household happily devouring popcorn with various delicious seasonings like caramel and cheese. With sparkling eyes, Latte declares it's finally the morning of the last day of the banquet. Looking dejected, she decides to give up on dressing elaborately, which shocks her maid, Esula. Latte explains with a sad smile that no dress will ever make the crown prince choose her over Ibelin. She reflects on her standing, admitting she isn't even a strong contender among the other beautiful ladies. After her stomach grumbles, Latte grabs Esula's hands and declares their efforts hopeless, which makes Esula cry, thinking it's just an excuse to eat more popcorn. Dressed in a beautiful red gown, a cheerful Latte is finally ready to head to the party. She comforts her crying mother, Viscountess Ectree, while privately finding her mother's dramatic tears amusing. With a hidden bowl of corn kernels, Lotte steps into the carriage and arrives at the magnificent castle. She reaffirms her plan. Her business is in the castle garden, not the crowded banquet hall. She locates the specific tree from the novel's plot, remembering it's where Ibelin will climb to save a bird's nest. Munch munch. In a comical aside, Lotte and two rabbits wear 3D glasses, eating popcorn like they're at the movies, ready for the drama to unfold. Just as the novel foretold, Ibelin climbs a tree to check on a bird's nest, but her foot slips precariously on the branch. Panicked, Ibelin clings to the branch with one hand while clutching the bird's nest, wondering what to do. Lotte watches from her hiding spot, thrilled and munching popcorn, as the scene unfolds exactly like the book. Step, step. As Lotte anticipates his arrival, a man emerges from the woods, walking toward the tree. With a cool gaze, the man looks up at the tree and asks what she is doing there. The story announces the grand entrance of the super popular youngest Duke of the Empire, Kenneth. Kenneth repeats his question to the person in the tree, demanding to know what they are doing. With a flourish, the narrative once again emphasizes the dramatic appearance of the popular Duke Kenneth. Still stuck in the tree, Ibelin looks down at the stranger and hesitantly asks who he is. Bang! Kenneth is comically thunderstruck by her question, while Ibelin looks on in confusion. Lotte bursts into silent laughter from the bushes, finding his shocked reaction absolutely hilarious. While a dejected Kenneth looks down in disbelief, Lotte happily continues to enjoy her popcorn and the show. Kenneth asks Ibelin if she truly doesn't recognize him, much to the amusement of Lotte, who finds the obviousness of the situation delightful. Ibelin sarcastically asks if she should know him, while Kenneth smirks, intrigued by her response. Flustered, Ibelin pleads for help getting down, but Kenneth simply laughs at her predicament. When Kenneth asks why she climbed the tree, Ibelin explains that she was concerned about the bird's nest. Ibelin points up at the nest, explaining that it looked tilted and was in danger of falling. She smiles sweetly, showcasing her kind nature. With a gentle expression, Ibelin finishes her explanation, stating she was just trying to help. As Ibelin descends from the tree, Kenneth moves in and catches her gracefully in his arms. Peeking from the bushes, Lotte notes that this relationship is progressing much faster than the Crown Prince's. As Kenneth and Ibelin walk away, Lotte strains to listen, but is too far away to hear their conversation. Deciding she needs to get closer, Lotte carefully slides out from behind the bush to follow them. Crunch. Her stealthy approach is ruined when she accidentally steps on something, making a loud noise. Lotte freezes in horror as Kenneth and Ibelin halt, and he angrily shouts, "Who's there?" Caught. A chibi Lotte laughs nervously before muttering that the loud popcorn is to blame for her discovery. Panicking, Lotte decides her only option is to act natural and pretend she's just a passerby. She attempts to casually stroll past the pair, labeling herself Passerby 1 in her mind. Lotte turns with a pleasant smile, but flinches when Kenneth glares at her with intense, deep-set eyes that give her a strange sense of déjà vu. Kenneth instantly pegs Lotte as a crazed stalking fan, leaving her utterly bewildered by the sudden accusation. Lotte is dismayed that Kenneth sees her as a stalker, lamenting the irony of being judged by a fictional character for something she despises. Kenneth confronts Lotte, explaining he came to the garden to escape people like her and demanding to know how she found him. As Lotte frantically denies his accusations, Kenneth corners her and asks why she was hiding in the bushes. Lotte offers a weak excuse about wanting to eat her strong-smelling popcorn outside, but Kenneth just scoffs. HMPH. She vehemently insists she wasn't stalking him, but a jaded Kenneth dismisses her, saying that's what they all say. Lotte internally concedes that his reaction is understandable, recalling from the novel that his life of being stalked made him hate women. While stuffing her face, Lotte continues to plead her innocence to His Excellency. She grows frustrated, wondering why he's so unmoved even when she offers him her precious popcorn. Internally fuming at his coldness, Lotte imagines shoving popcorn right up his perfect nostrils. To Lotte's surprise, Ibelin turns and intervenes, telling Kenneth to stop his interrogation. Ibelin defends Lotte, calling his accusation harsh, while Kenneth gently touches Ibelin's hair, remarking on its beauty. Grinning from ear to ear, Lotte feels incredibly lucky to have a front row seat to the unfolding romance. Latte mentally cheers Ibelin on, thinking that while she'd be in trouble for cussing him out, it's considered romantic when Ibelin does it. Ibelin continues to speak on Latte's behalf, arguing against Kenneth's assumptions. In a disastrous attempt to help, Ibelin passionately claims Latte was following him out of pure love, leaving Latte completely mortified. As Ibelin delivers her impassioned speech, Latte cringes, comparing her to a clueless husband, making a family misunderstanding infinitely worse. The argument escalates as Kenneth asks Ibelin what she gains from this, and she retorts by questioning his own motives for helping people, prompting Kenneth to tell Ibelin that she has never helped him. Caught in the middle of their fight, Latte comically slips on her 3D glasses, ready to watch the drama intensify. Kenneth watches Latte's bizarre behavior with a smirk. Finding her a unique and very interesting person, Latte is thrown off by this development, wondering how the plot could be progressing so differently and so much faster than she remembered from the novel. Latte panics as Kenneth declares his interest in her, realizing he's using classic romantic lines way too early. She comically imagines him as a merman, already fishing in the sea of romance. Realizing she's become a catalyst for the main couple's romance, she laments her supporting role before defiantly eating popcorn, and Kenneth glares back at Latte, a faint blush on his cheeks as he watches her. Latte is baffled by his hostile gaze, wondering why he seems to be picking a fight with her. He clinch. Kenneth belittles Latte, questioning why he'd ever feel sorry for her, a line Latte recognizes as classic rude but hot male lead dialogue. Trudge, trudge. Annoyed, Latte walks forward, deciding she's officially pissed off by his behavior. She turns to Ibelin for support, asking if she heard Kenneth's insulting remarks. Nod. After Ibelin agrees, Latte presses further, suggesting that staying quiet is not the right response. Shove. Claiming her hand slipped, Latte aggressively shoves popcorn into a shocked Kenneth's mouth. In a quick flash, she imagines the popcorn kernels as powerful projectiles ready for launch. She commits fully, shoving the entire container of popcorn right up his good-looking nostrils. With grim satisfaction, she mentally vows that he will suffer for what she's done. Ibelin watches the spectacle, surprisingly thinking it's like performance art and that he's not as ugly as she expected. Her mission accomplished, Latte decides it's time to make a tactical retreat. As she flees, Latte thanks Ibelin for her support, while an enraged Kenneth chases after her, screaming insults. She brazenly taunts him while fleeing, feeling she's finally made him understand her point. Latte runs away satisfied, recalling from the novel that Kenneth's chivalry prevents him from drawing his sword on women. She finds the situation hilarious, imagining the noble Duke trying to be dignified with popcorn stuck in his nose. Her amusement turns to fear as she imagines him attacking her, forcing her to focus on survival. Kia. A scream echoes as a carriage arrives at a grand house, signaling her return home. Latte giggles, pleased with her adventure, as Essela's voice calls out to her in distress. Snap, snap. Essela struggles to untangle Latte's messy hair, demanding to know what happened. Latte cryptically explains she was realizing justice by encouraging good and punishing evil, leaving Essela completely confused. She walks away, promising to explain later while leaving a bewildered Essela behind. Heading to her room, Latte decides she can't tell Essela the truth, deeming her too much of a gossip to be trusted with news of angering a duke. Swift. She sits at her desk and quickly begins writing with a quill. With a serious expression, Latte focuses intently on the task at hand. Her note concludes that her popcorn incident with Kenneth equals the death of her supporting role, finding no easy solution. Scribble, scribble. She writes with frantic energy, trying to figure out a plan. She furiously scribbles over the word friend, deciding that befriending Ibelin is her only path to survival. Rub, rub. She imagines herself, with bunny ears, practicing how to be friendly by rubbing against a creature with Ibelin's face. Considering her options, she first imagines becoming a sword master, comically waving a small twig. Plop! Her second, more morbid option is to drown herself in a basin, hoping for a better next life. Her third idea is to try and seduce Kenneth, but she quickly dismisses the dangerous fantasy. She decides the best path forward is to win over the heroine, Ibelin. Latte recalls from the novel that Ibelin was lonely and had no real friends. She remembers a detail about Ibelin eventually falling for the crown prince, which involved a sinister-looking girl with a frying pan. Stiff. Latte grows determined, believing Ibelin is the perfect target for her friendship plan. HMPH. She sulks, pondering if shoving popcorn up someone's nose truly warrants death. Suddenly, she seizes up in pain from a muscle spasm in her neck. Flop. She collapses onto her bed, desperate to figure out how to get close to the heroine. Close. Her eye narrows in concentration as she contemplates her next move. Drop. A single piece of popcorn falls beside her head on the pillow. She's plunged into a nightmare where Kenneth and his men menacingly surround her, showering her with popcorn as she screams apologies before waking in terror. Looking out the window, she realizes with relief that the terrifying encounter was only a dream. Already dressed, she admits she woke with a bad feeling before the sun had even risen. She steels herself for the day ahead, knowing that after Kenneth, the next male lead, Arwen, is set to appear. The narrative introduces Arwen as a cruel killer with an angelic face who only shows gentleness to Ibelin, whom she will soon meet on the street. The novel's next male lead is introduced, Arwen Hebron, the powerful and solitary owner of Tower Magic. Meanwhile, Latte anxiously gets ready in her room, hoping to leave before her mother returns from a walk. Slide yawning from the early start, she puts on her hat, feeling dead tired but determined. Clatter, clatter. From her carriage, Latte is surprised by how energetic the city streets are in the morning. A determined glint appears in her eyes as she prepares to execute the day's crucial mission. Clitter, clatter. The carriage arrives at a publishing house, where she's greeted by an employee. She cheerfully asks him to inform his boss, Book, that the author Rose is here to see him. Proud, Latte sits in the office, reflecting on how her writing single-handedly made this small publisher a success. Thud! Thump! A loud crash sounds from the stairs, followed by a frantic cry of, "Master!" The publisher, Book, appears at the bottom of the stairs, thrilled to see her has arrived. Bookie bows low in greeting, and Latte coolly acknowledges that it's been a while. A flashback shows that 3 years ago, a much less respectful Book was begging her to take her manuscript back. The narration reveals the manuscript he dismissed, The Various Situations of the Imperial Knights, became a #1 bestseller. His attitude changed completely after her success, with his form of address evolving from lady to writer, and finally to master. Book playfully teases her, asking if she smells something snobbish in the air. Latte informs Book that her next work will take some time, prompting him to anxiously ask for a timeline. She explains she has other work to do and can't give him a firm answer, leaving Book looking dejected. Bam, he slams the desk but quickly rallies, deciding to focus on expanding exports instead, much to her surprise. Book details their successful international expansion, while Latte sips her tea and imagines mountains of money, realizing she's on a roll. She internally admits she never expected her secret writing career to become so incredibly successful. She recalls asking Brooke why her novels sell so well, which prompted an impassioned speech from the publisher. Done. In short, he explained her novel was a cultural phenomenon, like a popular comic in a sea of textbooks. After Book hands her a bag of earnings, he watches her leave, wondering what she spends all that money on. Luxury. Utterly bewildered, Brooke is left surrounded by question marks, unable to reconcile her plain appearance with her claim. As she walks away, Latte thinks he's too shallow to understand, while he waves and wishes her well. Walking down the hot city street, she fans herself, remarking on the sweltering weather. She stops upon seeing a young child begging on the street, feeling sad that this is happening in a prosperous country. Oh wait, she suddenly realizes this is the fated moment from the novel, the setup for Ibelin and Arwen to meet. The story recalls how Ibelin's sympathy for the child leads to her getting caught up with dangerous gangsters. A dark image shows a terrified Ibelin being surrounded by menacing, shadowy figures. She approaches the boy and gives him food and milk, unable to just pass by even though he's a plot device. Bite. As the boy eats gratefully, Latte sits at a nearby outdoor cafe to await Ibelin's inevitable arrival. Fumble. She instinctively reaches for her popcorn and 3D glasses, feeling empty without her drama viewing essentials. Reaffirming her goal, she imagines becoming best friends with Ibelin and steals her resolve. Staring at the odd-looking food on her plate, she impatiently thinks, "Now come quickly." My rub hill. Ding! Her eyes widen as she spots a familiar figure approaching the child on the street. Just as the novel described, a hooded Ibelin kindly gives the poor child a gold coin. Stride, seizing the opportunity, Latte leaps from her chair and rushes out, shouting, "Now's the time!" Bump. She deliberately crashes into Ibelin, thinking of the move as a strategic body slam to initiate contact. The young boy looks up in surprise and recognizes her, calling out, "Huh? Bread lady?" Thinking fast, Latte shoves more bread into his mouth to silence him. Turning back to a surprised Ibelin, Latte nervously begins her planned introduction. Stare. Ibelin's piercing green eyes lock onto Latte's face with a curious intensity. Ibelin points at Latte's face and mentions her nose, which Latte takes as a sign her plan is working. Latte eagerly confirms her identity, then smoothly reminds Ibelin that they met in the garden the day before. Nod. Ibelin's expression softens into a warm smile as she nods, remembering their previous encounter. Ibelin thanks her profusely, calling her a savior and insisting she might have died yesterday without her help. Latte is horrified that Ibelin isn't denying the danger, forcing her to wonder if Kenneth was actually going to kill her. Realizing she never got her name, Latte asks, and the hooded woman introduces herself as Ibelin Dot, telling her to call her Ibelin. Ibelin beams, happy to have made a new friend, and cheerfully says, "All right, Latte." Latte recalls that Ibelin is a foreign student, studying ancient languages, lamenting that she should have learned them too. She remembers from the novel that the first male lead studied ancient languages just to get closer to Ibelin, who had no idea. Struggle! Latte racks her brain for a conversation starter, but her mind goes blank. A group of menacing men suddenly surrounds them, and their leader declares, "Here you are," leaving Ibelin confused. The burly leader holds the young boy up by his collar, demanding to know if they were the ones who gave him gold coins. Latte instantly recognizes the cliched villain dialogue, while Ibelin looks on with concern. Embracing her role as a sidekick, Latte steps forward and sternly tells the man to return the money. The man mocks her for giving orders, leaving Latte anxious as she realizes her bluff has failed. Hey! The lead thug and his cronies menacingly demand they hand over all their money. Latte and Ibelin cling to each other in fear, as Latte desperately wonders when Sir Arwen will arrive to save them. A determined voice declares, "I've had enough of this." Latte angrily scolds the men for mistreating the precious Sir 10 gold. She adds that she's even more offended they called Ibelin a lousy chick, shocking the thugs with her nerve. The leader threatens her while Latte, huffing, attempts a bizarre rap battle that ends with him asking if she wants to die. Wham! Latte fantasizes about one of the thugs getting punched, smugly thinking she opposes violence only when she's the target. PFT. The leader spits and repeats his demand for their money. Latte gets lost in thought, questioning the logic of robbers who claim to be saying it nicely. Someone suddenly grabs Latte, pulling her into the confrontation. The gangster leader looms over them, demanding their money, and Latte is shocked at how close he's gotten. Both Latte and Ibelin are terrified, but Ibelin steps forward to confront the man. Latte internally praises Ibelin's heroic line as she scolds the man for stealing from a child. Ibelin calls the thug an impudent man, who snarls back, asking if she's crazy. Ibelin begins to worry, wondering if Arwen was supposed to arrive this late in the story. Latte panics, realizing with dawning horror that Arwen should have appeared before the gangster ever got this close to Ibelin. Whoosh! A large hand swings through the air with surprising speed. The gangster looks up in shock, wondering what the strange object flying through the air is. A new figure gracefully descends from the sky, landing perfectly as the gangsters stare in disbelief. As the chapter ends, Latte declares her role as the sidekick who has come to rate the stars. Grab! In a split second, Latte grabs the gangster's arm, stopping his attack. The man is stunned, looking down at Latte's hand on his arm in complete confusion. Gasp! Latte is terrified by the man's scary face, but is also offended that he's only just noticed her, a mere supporting character. Stab! Confirming her suspicions, she's mentally wounded by his lousy chick comment. Glare! The gangster threatens to beat them both up instead. Latte scoffs at the idea of being beaten up as the man's fist glows with angry energy. She comically objects, questioning why she gets a fist when Ibelin only got a palm slap, accusing him of discrimination. Stride. In a silly daydream, Arwen winks and apologizes for being late, blaming it on a bathroom break. Blank. Snapping out of her fantasy, Latte panics for real, fearing a tragic death where Arwen saves only Ibelin. Her eyes narrow with grim determination as she decides she has no other choice. Latte throws her hand up and boldly yells, "Time out." The gangster laughs at her command and tells her to just give him the money. Whoosh! Latte unleashes her ultimate weapon, a seemingly endless scroll of magical cash, much to the gangster's confusion. She strikes a pose, wrapped in a magical swirl of golden coins. Whoosh, shouting, "Power!" She unleashes the force of her money, blasting the thugs back. Arg! The men scream as they are caught in the powerful, money-fueled gust. Swish! They are sucked into a vortex, crying out against the enormous force. Ting! They're sent flying into the sky like a shooting star as Latte triumphantly boasts about the power of money. An utterly bewildered Ibelin turns to Latte and asks, "Is this magic?" Winking confidently, Latte declares that her explanation is correct. Ibelin realizes the wind was indeed caused by magic. Latte explains the expensive magic scroll was worth 20 gold pieces, watching it flare up as it burns. She reveals she spends most of her earnings on these scrolls and is treated as a super gold and platinum VVIP at the shop that sells them. She recalls the shopkeepers bowing deeply to her in reverence. Latte muses that she never intended to use the scroll, as this event was meant for Arwen's appearance, and she comically wonders why he isn't in his fishbowl. A stunned Ibelin turns to Latte and asks how she managed to do that. Drop. Deciding it's best to just make something up, Latte begins to stammer out an excuse. Latte quickly lies, claiming it was a self-defense magic scroll from her last birthday, and Ibelin bows in understanding. Ibelin beams gratefully, calling Latte her savior. Hehehe. Latte happily proposes they are saviors to each other, and Ibelin cheerfully agrees. Relieved, Latte celebrates winning Ibelin's favor and successfully avoiding any potential "Kenneth's gonna murder me" storylines. Elsewhere, Arwen looks on thoughtfully as Latte's inner voice thanks him for not showing up. The aftermath shows the defeated thugs scrambling up a crumbling wall as Latte notes the city's poor security. Step, step. She walks over to the unconscious gangster leader and, with a clink, takes his money pouch. As the gangster groans about his lost money, Latte cheerfully asks Ibelin what she'd like to eat with their new funds. Arwen's crimson eye reflects the scene, as he thinks he didn't expect to witness such an event. He recalls stepping out for a moment and seeing the hooded Ibelin before a snap and a flutter of movement caught his attention. Whoosh! He watches Latte and Ibelin from afar, calling out to the hood and realizing with surprise that Latte possesses mana. Perched on a rooftop, Arwen hums to himself, deciding to watch the interesting scene for a little longer. He looks on in disbelief as Latte unleashes her money vortex, laughing maniacally, and a grin spreads across his face. Arwen observes Latte's simple attire and concludes she must be the daughter of a very wealthy family. Swoosh! A dark wisp of energy dissipates as Arwen departs, thinking the spectacle was brief but fun. Latte strikes a triumphant pose, celebrating the power of magical cash in defending justice. At home, a flustered Latte listens as Ibelin explains she had returned after remembering she'd left a hairpin behind. Thump thump. Latte internally fumes, realizing she rushed over so early in the morning for nothing. The next morning, she had gone to the Count's residence, only to spill her drink when a maid informed her of Ibelin's visit. She panics, realizing the plot is changing. Ibelin was supposed to remember the hairpin later. She remembers the original novel's plot. After forgetting her hairpin, Ibelin is pickpocketed on her way back home. Push. In the novel, Arwen then appears with a charming smile, having recovered her stolen wallet. Latte despairs, wondering how they could have met without her, feeling like an unlucky fan who missed the main event. TSK. She laments that she was looking forward to seeing Arwen, recalling his description as Arwen Hebram, a merciless killer with an angel's face. In a flashback, a younger Arwen is met with murmurs of disapproval for being too young and from the slums. An old wizard coughs and insults him, but his attendant warns him about his rising blood pressure. Whoosh! Arwen's eyes blaze as he angrily challenges his critics to do better themselves. Urghed. In a single night of bloodshed, he massacred a third of the wizards, becoming an object of fear and awe, who formed his own powerful faction. Latte concludes that, in terms of pure magic, Arwen is the most powerful character in the entire story. She smugly thinks that Kenneth and Rondimia would still rank #1 in swordsmanship, imagining the two of them together. As Ibelin asks about the tea, Latte giggles to herself, thinking that with all the #1s around, they should just rename the country the friggin' powerful empire. Ibelin offers Latte more tea, prompting Latte to realize that Ibelin herself, who is friends with all these powerhouses, is essentially the top-ranked person on the continent. Latte politely declines, complimenting the tea's aroma while privately celebrating her status as Ibelin's friend. Having finished their tea, Ibelin suggests they take a walk in the garden. Latte readily agrees, deciding it's best to always go along with the heroine's plans, but then she spots a familiar person approaching. She recognizes the newcomer with a jolt, His Highness the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince, Rondemio, greets Ibelin, and Latte internally squeals with excitement at meeting such a rare species. Ibelin's deadpan, "Yeah, so what?" response leaves Latte utterly baffled by her lack of emotion. Rondemio explains he was just stopping by to discuss something with the Count. There, his gaze lingers on Ibelin with clear interest. Looking dejected, Sad Ron wonders if this girl truly has no interest in him, while Latte can't help but admire how handsome he is. Lost in admiration, Latte comically wonders how many men were sacrificed for such a perfect face, lamenting that one could have been her soulmate. Cough. The thought causes her to suffer a sudden nosebleed, feeling her heart tear apart from the sheer handsomeness. Rondemio turns his attention to Latte with a questioning look. Rondemio asks Latte if she's staring because he's so good-looking, leaving her momentarily speechless. Droop. Latte mentally apologizes, grateful he isn't scolding her for being caught staring at him. She quickly recovers, enthusiastically agreeing that His Highness's dazzling appearance is to blame. Her over-the-top compliment leaves Rondemio completely silent and taken aback. Latte internally panics, wondering if her joke about needing insurance for her nosebleed failed, causing him to see her as a tacky girl. Rondemio turns his attention to Ibelin, asking if the two of them were out for a walk. Ibelin simply explains that Latte is a friend, a fact that stuns Latte. Overcome with emotion, Latte tearfully celebrates being called Ibelin's friend as Rondemio looks on. Rondemio looks at Latte with a questioning gaze and simply asks, "Why?" Latte becomes comically enraged, defensively wondering what's so strange about her being friends with Ibelin. Rondemio dismisses his question and turns back to Ibelin, expressing his gladness at their chance meeting and asking for her name. Shalala. Ibelin gracefully introduces herself as Ibelin. Smile. Rondemio is delighted to meet Ibelin again, while Latte is shocked by how charming his smiling eyes are. Pop! A pair of rabbit ears appear from the grass, followed by the sniffing face of a small white rabbit. Squeak! Latte spots the animal, noting that the garden seems to have a lot of rabbits. Bolt! The rabbit suddenly dashes off like an assassin, making Latte chuckle as she gets a mischievous idea. Fidget! Latte dramatically thanks His Highness for saving her friend's life from the dangerous beastly rabbit. Clearing his throat, Rondemio patiently endures her antics, while Latte realizes he's playing along to charm Ibelin's friend and decides to tease him more. Fierce! Latte imagines attacking Rondemio with a frying pan, concluding his real flaw is being too handsome, which led to Ibelin's betrayal in the novel. Rondemio plays along, asking if Ibelin was the dangerous beast, which sends her into a fit of laughter. Ahahaha, Ibelin continues to laugh uncontrollably, leaving Latte confused by the sudden shift in mood. Latte compares Ibelin's refreshing laughter to cider and reflects on the difference between a protagonist's charming laugh and a sidekick's more boisterous one. Poorer. Latte resolves to stay strong as a sidekick while Rondemio watches Ibelin, believing her intervention is preventing him from falling for her too soon. Shh! Rondemio gently tells Ibelin her laughter is beautiful, a line so cheesy it makes Latte comically vomit a rainbow. Latte imagines Rondemio asking, "How much money do you need?" and decides even that line would sound cool coming from him. Ibelin offers a simple, "Thank you," and Latte is comically shocked by her soulless, deadpan delivery. Rondemio tells Latte she doesn't need to be formal either, prompting her to wonder if he's already forgotten her name. Sour. Mentally calling him a sneaky and tacky girl, Latte decides his mood doesn't matter, as long as he thinks of her as Ibelin's friend. Wink, wink. Latte strikes a playful pose and greets an imaginary audience. Her sudden, bizarre introduction leaves both Rondemio and Ibelin looking utterly confused. Dab. In a cartoonish fantasy, Latte declares her specialty is backstabbing, planting a flag with her face on it into Rondemio. Chuckle. She poses victoriously, adding that it's also her hobby. Her fantasy continues as she plants her skull and crossbones flags in Kenneth, Rondemio, and Arwen. Latte clarifies that she wasn't raising a love flag, but a death flag, concluding her imaginary sequence. Back in reality, Rondemio politely takes his leave, stating that the Count is waiting for him. He turns to Ibelin one last time, expressing his hope that they will meet again soon. Haha, Latte internally laughs at Rondamio's confused expression after she treated him so rudely. As he walks away, Latte muses that while she may have been too rude, it was just too much fun to resist. While waving goodbye, Latte notices Ibelin is still giggling and identifies her cute but tough persona as Gatmo, just as a maid approaches. Tap tap. Latte and Ibelin turn their attention to the maid as she gets closer. Ibelin turns to Latte and invites her to join her on a visit to the library. Latte is utterly shocked by the unexpected invitation to the library. The Grand National Library is shown as Latte recalls that Ibelin often visited to borrow old books. Latte has a flash of insight, remembering that Ibelin meets the second male lead, Kenneth, at the library and realizes she can't miss this event. Thrilled by the opportunity, Latte excitedly agrees to go with Ibelin. She devises a plan. She'll make it clear to Kenneth that she's Ibelin's friend so he won't be able to kill her. After Ibelin prepares, they head out, and Ibelin asks Latte a question on the way. Ibelin observes that Latte seems unusually pleased about their trip to the library. Realizing her excitement was too obvious, Latte eagerly confirms that she is, of course, very pleased. Tremble. Latte gleefully imagines Kenneth shaking with fury, unable to harm her in Ibelin's presence, finding the thought highly entertaining. Latte smirks, deciding she should keep her past life quirks a secret from Ibelin. To bond with Ibelin, Latte enthusiastically claims she loves books, specifically Be More books, and winks repeatedly, happy to have found common ground. Ha ha ha. Flutter. Ibelin laughs angelically, which Latte mistakes as amusement at her silly antics, leaving Latte dumbfounded by her pure reaction. Latte and Ibelin stand together before a grand estate, ready to head off to their destination. A voice off screen announces that their carriage is ready. Latte thinks with mischievous anticipation about how Kenneth will react to her being with Ibelin. Both girls stare in shock at a massive, ornate, and beautiful carriage waiting for them. Latte recalls that her father owes Ibelin's father a favor, explaining the lavish transport, while Ibelin says it wasn't necessary. Mimicking a humble protagonist, Latte tells Ibelin that such a grand carriage is too much for someone like her. Laughing hysterically inside the carriage, Latte jokes that human travel is softer than a dragon's scale, much to Ibelin's amusement. Panicked, Latte asks if Ibelin heard her strange joke, but Ibelin just laughs, calling her funny. Latte marvels at her kindness as their trip ends quickly. Arriving at their destination, Latte steps out of the carriage and gasps in awe. They stand before an impossibly tall and magnificent building, utterly impressed by its scale. Step. Step. Inside, Latte is stunned by the even more beautiful interior as they ascend a grand staircase. Clack. Having never actually been to a library, Latte realizes she has no choice but to follow Ibelin's lead. Latte notices another person studying hard for Ibelin and then scans the area, searching for Kenneth. She spots the back of a familiar figure in a regal blue coat, instantly recognizing him. Spotting Kenneth standing on the staircase, she internally groans that he's so handsome, it's annoying how easy he is to find. Wobble. High above a focused Ibelin, a heavy book teeters precariously on the edge of a shelf. Flutter. As the book begins to fall, a panicked Latte cries out Ibelin's name. Beep. Beep. The scene shifts to a woman with glasses watching a TV show titled Show Me the Sidekick. That is interesting to hear about the cartoonish Latte. Do you have any other text you would like me to read? The woman watching the show looks confused, wondering if the girl on screen is a new rapper. TV Latte raps about being a ferocious rabbit and Ibelin's friend, leaving the viewer completely unimpressed. Jolt. Latte wakes from the bizarre dream where a voice calls her rude for a sidekick, and she agrees with a sigh that she's a horrible one. Flutter. Back in reality, the book falls from the shelf as someone yells a warning. Grab. Kenneth swoops in, catching the book just in time and sliding behind a surprised Ibelin. Leaning close, Kenneth whispers to Ibelin that she was almost hit. Latte pokes her own eye in frustration, annoyed that Kenneth's cheesy line still managed to be cool. Through Latte's jealous point of view, Kenneth's handsome face is reduced to a giant nose with a popcorn kernel inside. Latte rushes to Ibelin's side, anxiously asking if she's all right, to which Ibelin calmly responds. Glare. Kenneth turns his head, shooting a furious look in Latte's direction. Standing beside Evelyn, Latte correctly guesses that Kenneth is wondering why they're together. Latte cheerfully announces that she and Evelyn are friends on an outing, leaving Kenneth stunned and speechless. Clinging to a smiling Evelyn, Latte grins as her new friend confirms their friendship. TSK. Annoyed, Kenneth turns away from the pair. Tremble. Latte snuggles closer to Evelyn, delighting in Kenneth's furious expression and imagining his murderous thoughts. A close-up highlights Kenneth's intense death glare. Latte dramatically hides behind Evelyn, feigning terror and claiming his grace is threatening her. Kenneth calls a halt, shocked that his glare was taken seriously and that Latte might actually be telling the truth. Sob. While fake crying, Latte marvels at her own instincts as Evelyn steps up to defend her, demanding Kenneth treat her friend properly. The narration notes Kenneth's confusion as he stares into Evelyn's captivating green eyes. Twitch, twitch. Latte smiles smugly, mentally daring Kenneth to hit her, knowing Evelyn will protect her. Seeing Kenneth's twitching eyebrow and defeated sigh, Latte finds it all too good, briefly imagining punching someone herself. The narration explains that the men of this world revolve around Evelyn, unable to risk losing her affection. Realizing Kenneth's only option is to forgive her, Latte finds his situation pitiful, but ultimately decides it's his problem, not hers. Latte clings to Evelyn, vowing to stay by her side forever as Kenneth watches in bewilderment. Sparkle. Latte beams, thoroughly enjoying the sight of Kenneth's frustrated frown. Beam. Deciding to provoke him a little more with a bright smile, Latte then prepares to leave. As Latte and Evelyn stand together, Kenneth dismisses them for the day but glances aside, seemingly about to add something else. At the library, a man with brown hair approaches and asks Evelyn if she comes here often. Sparkle. He looks on thoughtfully after her reply. As Evelyn looks on in confusion, he smiles and says he hopes they meet again. Step. As he walks away, Latte recalls a comment she once wrote online, cheering for Kenneth to win the girl over. Latte cringes at her past self, while noting that Evelyn, like a true protagonist, seems clueless about Kenneth's interest. Step. Holding her book, Evelyn turns to Latte and asks if she's ready to leave. Latte and Evelyn descend the grand library staircase together. Latte cheerfully suggests they go outside, exclaiming it would be a sin to stay indoors on such a lovely day. Evelyn suddenly grabs Latte's arm to stop her. Evelyn asks for the books and dashes back inside, leaving a confused Latte wondering why she's returning them. Clack, clack, clack. Latte calls after her as Evelyn turns back with a mysterious smile. Evelyn gets close, taking a flustered Latte's hands in her own. Utterly bewildered, Latte wonders what's going on with Evelyn's sudden change in behavior. A preview for the next episode teases Latte's upcoming surprise. Evelyn suggests they go eat something first since the weather is so nice, promising to get the books on their way back. Latte thinks to herself that she was getting famished and happily agrees to the plan. A montage of exquisite dishes appears as Latte notes the city center's many famous restaurants. Flinch Latte recalls a time when she ate so much that the seams of her dress nearly ripped. Munch, munch. A flashback shows a younger Latte enthusiastically devouring a large meal. Evelyn thinks the food is delicious, perhaps due to a lack of condiments, while Latte decides one indulgence is fine. Latte leads Evelyn to a restaurant known for accidental encounters. Dismissing Evelyn's worry about seeing Arwen, they arrive at the restaurant and are greeted with a warm welcome. Latte freezes in absolute shock as she spots Arwen standing inside. Mortified, Latte recognizes Arwen and comically questions if it's market day for the fish market. As they stand there, Latte wonders why Arwen is here of all places. Arwen's face lights up as he spots them and calls out Evelyn's name. Frozen in place, Latte panics as the fated meeting unfolds before her very eyes. Arwen smoothly asks what brings them here, as Evelyn admires his angelic appearance and assumes he's also there to eat. As Latte tries to become one with the background, Evelyn asks Arwen if he's there to eat as well. Beam. Arwen gives a dazzling smile, confirming he is there to eat and calling their meeting lucky. Cough. Latte is overwhelmed by his beauty, thinking he looks more like a squeaky clean rule follower than a murderer. Latte knows the truth. Despite his angelic face, Arwen is secretly foul-mouthed and cruel, but only when Evelyn isn't around. Evelyn casually remarks that, of course, she doesn't run into pickpockets every day. Latte watches in awe, amazed that Evelyn can speak to the formidable Arwen so casually. Latte reflects on Arwen's immense power, noting that, as the head of Hebron, he has made the magic tower stronger than ever. She concludes that Arwen isn't a mere nobleman, but more like the king of his own kingdom. Ibelin smiles and chats with him like a friend, mentioning that she has a companion with her this time. Glance. Arwen's eyes meet Latte's for a moment before he looks away, causing her to panic over being ignored. Crack. Latte puts on a brave face, telling herself she fully expected to be dismissed by him. As Ibelin begins to introduce her friend, Arwen cuts her off with a cold, "I don't care." He bluntly tells a stunned Ibelin he isn't interested, and warns her to be careful on the streets today. Waving goodbye, Arwen casually says he will see them next time. Whoosh. He vanishes in a swirl of magical energy. Flash, Latte stares at the empty space, stunned by his sudden departure. Overwhelmed, Latte laments that his casual use of teleportation is amazing and something a sidekick like her can't expect. Latte muses about her jealousy over his genius magical abilities as Ibelin looks on with concern. Ibelin gently asks a dazed Latte if she is alright. Latte quickly snaps out of it, insisting she's fine and joking that it's not like she was trying to get his attention. She laughs loudly, assuring Ibelin that she isn't bothered and has no intention of becoming a jealous side character. Suddenly, a thought strikes Latte, and her expression shifts to one of pure confusion. Still reeling, Latte learns from Ibelin that Arwen was the very person who found her lost purse that morning. Latte forces a smile, struggling to process the unbelievable coincidence. Ibelin asks if she did something wrong, while Latte internally notes a strange, fleeting change in Ibelin's expression. A preview card featuring a smiling Arwen wishes the audience farewell until next time. Latte reflects on Ibelin's momentary shift in expression, deciding to forget the unsettling glance since she can't recall it clearly. Back in her room, Latte reflects on the astonishingly busy day where she managed to meet all 3 male leads. Giggle. She happily circles a date on her calendar, officially declaring the day of Arwen's appearance Fish Day. As Latte happily skips along a path, a maid calls out to her. The maid smiles warmly as she approaches Latte. Latte points to herself in surprise, asking if they were waiting for her. As the maid holds a door open, Latte wonders why multiple people are waiting for her. In the meeting room, Latte's father, mother, and a chef murmur her name with anticipation. Latte realizes with a frown that the maid is leading her directly to the meeting room. Her eyes widen in shock as she puts the pieces together, questioning why they're holding a meeting about her. In a detective-themed fantasy, Latte introduces herself as Latte Ectree, a noble, ready to solve the case. The scene shows a serene and elegant-looking Latte. Narration explains that, as the 18-year-old, undated daughter of a noble, Latte is at a certain age. Burden. The maid announces her arrival, and Latte panics, realizing this is probably about marriage. Her father calls her name with a stern expression, making Latte even more nervous. Lean. Noticing her mother is also present, Latte feels her terrible suspicion is about to be confirmed. Her father gravely tells her to sit down, stating he has something to discuss. Convinced she knows what's coming, Latte braces for the worst. Squeeze. She mentally screams, "No!" in absolute defiance of an arranged marriage. To her complete shock, her father begins by mentioning her idea for a popcorn business. Huh? Latte and the entire room staff stare in baffled silence at the unexpected topic. Ha ha ha. Slap! Latte bursts into hysterical laughter, slapping her cheeks while denying she said anything aloud. Mortified by her outburst, she imagines herself tossing and turning, certain the embarrassment will keep her up for a week. Her father continues, mentioning he heard the popcorn snack she created is quite simple to cook. Latte snaps out of her embarrassment, now intrigued and wondering if a popcorn business could actually be profitable. As adorable popcorn creatures dance in her imagination, she concludes that it might just work. Her father enthusiastically lays out his plan to start with a small cart and expand to a shop if it's successful. Latte eagerly agrees to the business plan as her parents watch with proud smiles. Nod. Nod. Envisioning millions, Latte reaffirms her belief that cash rules while her mother wonders what she's doing. Beam, Latte observes her parents and the chef's happy faces, realizing they are all ready to invest. She privately smiles, thinking it's always good to get rich together. Latte asks her father why he's home from work so early, and he cheerfully replies that he's on paid leave. Chatter. Her father eagerly discusses starting the business right away, and Latte agrees. As he delegates trading duties to the head butler, Latte notices her mother's expression and assumes she's worried. Wink. Latte playfully winks at her mother, trying to reassure her that she's rich enough to cover any potential losses. Her mother ignores the gesture completely, prompting Latte to sigh that being ignored is becoming a habit. Glare. She makes a mental note to never wink at Kenneth, imagining he would swiftly cut her throat. Blink. Latte starts to daze off from exhaustion as her father continues planning the logistics of buying corn. Yawn. The maid, Essela, leans in excitedly, asking if she's also an investor and if they're going to be rich. Clap, clap. Latte cheerfully replies that she hopes so, and Essela celebrates with her. While walking to her room with Essela, Latte decides she needs a walk to burn off the rich meal she had with Ibelin. She laments the noble culture of impossibly thin waists while acknowledging the food is delicious despite the calories. Latte joyfully flops onto her bed, rolling around and exclaiming how comfortable it is. She suddenly sits bolt upright, having remembered something important. Clatter. She rushes to her desk and makes a note on her calendar, not forgetting to document the day's events. Feeling utterly satisfied, Latte beams with happiness, thinking it was truly the best day. Latte daydreams of Kenneth, Rondemio, and Arwen as rare, handsome mermen, comically celebrating their appearance as if it were Foundation Day. Pulled back to reality, she opens a drawer to check how many teleportation scrolls she has left. She muses that watching the fish with Ibelin has become her new entertainment, so she counts her 7 remaining scrolls, thinking they will last a long time, before trailing off uncertainly. The scene transitions to the bright sunshine of the next morning. Stretch. Latte wakes up late, feeling well-rested and refreshed. Munch munch. To atone for a night of eating popcorn, she dutifully eats a bowl of vegetables for breakfast. As she eats, a maid approaches with a letter, and Latte expresses her surprise at receiving mail. After the maid confirms it's for her, Latte opens it and panics, immediately assuming Kenneth has challenged her to a duel. Gulp. She imagines an intimidating Kenneth challenging her to a fight and worries that her prank went too far. Whew! With immense relief, she discovers it's merely an invitation to Viscount Denola's tea party. Her spirits lift as she realizes Ibelin has probably received the same invitation. Yay, Latte celebrates, excitedly remembering that this tea party is the setting for a classic story event where the protagonist gets into trouble. She pictures the upcoming events, Kenneth fighting, Ibelin getting into an incident with orcs, and the necessary trip to the countryside where it all happens. Puff. She happily thinks about how she'll get to see monsters up close with zero risk, declaring her love for such events while a confused Ibelin looks on. With a smug look, Latte decides she should just stay home to conserve her energy for the spectacle. Sneak. She creeps through the hall, planning to relax and watch everything unfold tomorrow, hoping her nanny won't find her. Her plan is immediately ruined when her nanny appears, screaming her title with a furious expression. Undeterred, Latte does a happy dance before flinging open a window to gleefully shout about orcs, completely bewildering her maid. The narration explains that the Denola residence isn't very far away. However, a monster-filled mountain stood in the way until the royal government sent soldiers, and Kenneth, living up to his reputation, personally wiped out every monster, making the mountain safe. This peace lasted only until Ibelin appeared, as she naively decided to travel through that very mountain on the day of the party. On a beautiful day, Ibelin suggests they take the mountain road, and a delighted Latte quickly agrees. Latte laughs mischievously, eager for Ibelin to lead her straight to the story's main event. Having no reason to refuse the adventure, Latte accompanies Ibelin up the mountain path. Halt. Their journey comes to an abrupt stop as Latte senses that the moment has arrived. Puff. Just as predicted, Ibelin's protagonist nature summons danger even in the safest of places as an orc appears. They are suddenly confronted by a horde of orcs, one of which hisses, ready to kill the humans. Latte is stunned, observing that the pig-headed green monsters have muscular human-like bodies and can actually speak the human language. She notes they are less like pigs and more like formidable warrior pigs. Stare. Putting on an act, Latte comments on how scary the monster is before turning to Ibelin to ask what they should do. Ibelin, however, looks genuinely confused, wondering why monsters would be there at all. Cling. As an orc's eyes begin to glow, Latte holds onto Ibelin, thrilled at her chance to observe monsters up close. In a daze, she fully accepts her role as the observing sidekick. She finds the orcs' surprise amusing, and decides to scan them for as much information as possible. Swing, she watches in amazement as an orc brandishes its weapon with impressive aggression. The orc's attention is diverted as it spots someone new arriving behind the girls. Latte's eye widens as she too realizes another person has just entered the scene. The newcomer is revealed to be a grim-faced Kenneth. A preview for the next episode shows Kenneth arriving, smiling confidently in the face of danger. Latte is ecstatic at his arrival, nearly calling him Nostri before correcting herself to Kenneth. Visibly annoyed, Kenneth puts a hand to his face, wondering how he could have missed any monsters in the area. Puff. Latte watches the motionless orcs, curious as to why they've suddenly frozen in place. With a death glare, Kenneth freezes the orcs with sheer intimidation, and Latte marvels at how genuinely scary his power is. Draw. His hand moves to the hilt of his sword, preparing to strike. Latte's mind is loading as she tries to process the imminent battle. She faces the difficult choice of whether to watch the potentially gory fight or close her eyes. Flinch. She decides to peek through a winking eye, and the odd gesture catches Kenneth's attention. Latte is confused when Kenneth turns and frowns directly at her. Slide. To her utter bewilderment, Kenneth slowly sheathes his sword. Dash with a charming smile, Kenneth suddenly rushes toward them, leaving Latte stunned by his actions. Oosh. Suddenly, a man shoves Latte aside. Lift. Kenneth scoops a surprised Ibelin into his arms. Dash. Latte screams in disbelief as Kenneth runs off with Ibelin. Bolt Latte watches in shock as they vanish in a puff of smoke. Standing alone amidst the lingering smoke, a bewildered Latte wonders what she just witnessed. Latte questions if Kenneth really just abandoned her with monsters, taking only Ibelin with him. Haha, in a brief fantasy, a merman version of Arwen laughs, calling her a crazy little fish. Latte decides this is her chance, rationalizing that she wanted Ibelin gone anyway and cheerfully wishing her well in the afterlife. Her mood snaps to fury as she pulls at her hair, enraged by Kenneth's cowardly and pathetic escape. She compares Kenneth's cowardice to a town from a comic she once read, imagining a parody of the scene. 3 monstrous figures emerge from the woods, and Latte notes with surprise that the snarling creatures can speak. As the monsters mock her as a pitiful human, Latte starts crying in despair before breaking into a defiant song. One of the monsters roars its intent to kill the pitiful human, and Latte stares back with tear-filled eyes. As the monsters pant, Latte recomposes herself, ready to face the threat head-on. She pulls a stack of magical scrolls from her dress, thankful she brought all she had. Winking confidently, Latte summons her magical cash power, ready for a fight. Rip. Declaring that the first strike wins, she decisively tears a scroll in half. Whoosh. She furiously rips through her entire stack of scrolls, determined to use them all at once. Whoosh, rip! A massive cyclone of magical energy erupts from the torn scrolls. The overwhelming power of her spell fills the air. Latte taunts the orcs to witness the power of her money as a whirlwind engulfs them, imagining herself as a glamorous magic user. Roar. In reality, the orcs are merely pelted by small, annoying rocks as Latte laughs maniacally. Bounce. A defense scroll activates a shield around Latte, who gleefully uses the opportunity to escape. Whoosh. Latte reflects on her successful strategy, noting the powerful combination of defense, attack, and teleport scrolls she used. Clean. The forest is peaceful once more after the battle. Puff. Gazing at a cloud, Latte calmly wishes the defeated monsters a better reincarnation. Step. Holding her last teleport scroll, she wonders where to go when a man's boots suddenly appear before her. Latte looks up, sensing the new arrival. Kenneth stands before her, looking down with an intense gaze. Grin. Latte's expression shifts to a sly, mischievous grin. Rip with a sweet smile, she tears her final teleport scroll, making her escape. A preview for the next episode shows a distraught Latte, questioning what is happening to her. The narration explains that Kenneth had carried Ibelin to safety, reassuring her that the immobile monsters were no threat. Bound. He had then easily used his mana to bind the orcs completely. Kenneth stands alone, observing the aftermath from a distance. Grin. The narration reveals he was only trying to scare Latte a little with his earlier glare. He thinks about how annoying Latte is, picturing her as a raccoon bothering Ibelin. But then he recalls seeing Latte competently defend herself against the orcs' attack. He was surprised to see her expertly using scrolls to blow the orcs away. Her unexpected display of power had left him momentarily unable to move. Utterly baffled, Kenneth wonders who and what she really is. He recalls that House Ectry lost its fortune, making it impossible for her to afford so many expensive scrolls. Smile. A close-up reveals Latte's confident, knowing smile as she faced him. Let her stand her ground as the teleportation magic activates around her. Flash. Kenneth flinches and shields his eyes from the blinding light of the spell. Whoosh. He is left standing alone in a swirl of wind, completely confused. Thud. Latte lands roughly in a new location, crying out in pain. Feeling sick and dizzy from the teleport scroll, she groans in discomfort. She looks around and recognizes her surroundings, realizing she has arrived at the plaza. Annoyed that her hair is a mess, Latte begins to tie it up. A narration explains that the city plaza is a common destination for teleport scrolls. The scroll shop is conveniently located just a few blocks away. Shake. Latte considers getting a scroll fixed to her home, but decides she just needs to restock. She cheerfully sings to herself about the short life of a story sidekick. Continuing her song, she resolves to save herself before thinking of Arwen as the petty prince of pettiness. Creak. She enters the magic shop, excited to empty her bank account and spend some money. Inside, she admires the shop's expensive, high-class atmosphere. She shivers, imagining how scary it would be to be laughed out of the store for being poor. Holding a book, she happily thinks about the money it earned her. A shopkeeper asks what she's looking for, and Latte introduces herself as Rose as the woman scans her intently. The shopkeeper gasps in recognition, fumbling her words and calling Latte a dear customer. Plop. The shopkeeper's eyes glitter as she eagerly presents a stack of scrolls. Latte casually selects several scrolls she wants to purchase. The shopkeeper waves her off enthusiastically, thanking her for the business. As Latte walks away, she finds the woman's extreme friendliness annoying, though understandable given the money involved. She finds herself on a quiet, shaded path and enjoys the coolness. Pondering her next move, she wonders what she should do now. A memory of a failed tea party flashes in her mind, and she concludes Ibelin won't be attending. The scene follows Latte as she continues down the narrow alley. Whoosh. She enjoys the scenic and quiet atmosphere of the empty path. Bump. Latte accidentally bumps into a man, quickly apologizing. The man cries out in pain over his arm as his two companions glance over. As the man shouts that his arm is broken, Latte realizes she's walked into a scam. The man points an accusing finger directly at her. Latte identifies the men as shoulder swindlers and thinks of them as bullies. Her eyes narrow with a determined glance. Slump. Deciding not to waste her expensive scrolls, she dismisses the broken arm trick as amateurish. Cough. She puts on a performance, clutching her heart and coughing violently as if having an attack. She continues her dramatic, choking act. Pant. Huff. She gasps for air, feigning her last moments and wondering if she will die. The swindlers panic, questioning if she's really dying from a simple shoulder bump. Internally proud, Latte recalls her experience faking sickness to skip high school classes, Plop announcing she's just a poor girl with a weak heart. She collapses dramatically to the ground. The men grow more frantic as Latte narrates her tragic death on the alley floor. Squeeze. She peeks through her fingers as the stomp of retreating footsteps grows louder. As the hoodlums dash away, she mentally cackles over how they fled from her dead body. After a moment of silence on the cold ground, she pops up with a triumphant, yay, celebrating saving her scrolls. She laughs aloud, feeling immense pride in defeating the scammers with her perfect acting skills. She muses that her acting is good enough to land a legendary role in a famous comic. The narration identifies her inspiration as a character from the manga series Glass Mask. Titan. Having succeeded, she begins to calmly tie her hair back up. She notices a scroll she didn't buy and curiously picks it up. Looking around the empty alley, she wonders where the scroll came from. Glance. Realizing it's an expensive scroll, she decides to sneakily pocket her find. She happily compares the lucky find to discovering a massive diamond ring on the street. Feeling her luck has increased by 100, she relishes the feeling of leveling up. Having forgiven Kenneth and defeated the bullies, she decides it's time to recharge her sugar levels. Tarts. She excitedly heads for a new tart shop, declaring the fruit-filled treats are basically just vitamins. Arriving at the shop, she happily places her order for tarts. Grab! Just as she's about to enjoy her treat, another hand snatches the tart from her plate. Latte blissfully devours the tart. narrating how quickly the treats moved from the plate to her stomach. Looking at the empty plates, she jokingly wonders if she has a gift for teleporting objects. Wiping away a tear of pure joy, she decides the tarts are so good that she must order 2 more. After telling herself she's full, she suddenly looks up with a startled, "Huh." Her eyes widen in horror as she spots the shoulder-swindling gang walking past the shop window. She ducks below the table in panic, relieved when she realizes the men didn't see her. Grr, she seriously considers acting like a tart-craving zombie if she runs into them again. Lost in thought, she debates whether dying by choking on tarts or acting like a zombie is more realistic. Jingle. The sound of the shop door opening catches her attention. She looks up with a blush, singing a romantic tune as someone enters. Her pleasant mood evaporates as she's suddenly struck with a very bad feeling. Whoosh! Deciding to hide, she quickly unties her ribbon to let her hair cover her face. Rustle. She buries her face in her hair as one of the swindlers greets the shop owner. Realizing the swindlers are harassing the pretty owner, Latte laments her bad luck and feels sorry for the woman. The owner expresses her discomfort, but the man makes a sleazy offer while Latte panics about being in the wrong place. The man with the mustache laughs, nonsensically offering to introduce the owner to a great cobbler. The owner firmly tells him to leave because she has a customer, which he questions. Latte stands up, revealing herself to the surprised swindlers and the shop owner. Sneak. As Latte tries to hide, one of the men points, having spotted her. Stab. She curses her distinct, messy hair for always giving her away. Clap. The mustache man recognizes her by her ridiculous hair, and Latte internally fires back an insult. The swindlers murmur insults about her hair, completely forgetting the owner, as Latte congratulates herself on her perfect acting. A tiny winking Latte mentally reassures the confused shop owner that she'll handle the situation. One of the men realizes her death was a sham, pointing out that she was eating tarts. Another swindler berates his companion for being fooled, cursing loudly and making the owner hiccup in shock. Reach. Disgusted by the hooligans, Latte decides to use the teleport scroll she found earlier. Flap. She examines the scroll, confident that it will take her to the park near her home. Rip, yelling goodbye. Latte dramatically tears the scroll to make her grand escape. The swindlers and the shop owner stare in complete shock at her sudden action. In a preview, Latte stands ready for battle, declaring herself a sidekick with scrolls and quote, magical cash power, unquote. Rip, shouting goodbye. Latte dramatically tears the scroll to make her grand escape. The swindlers and the shop owner stare in complete shock at her sudden action. She looks around in confusion, wondering why she is still in the shop. Flutter. As the torn pieces of the scroll fall, she clicks her tongue in frustration. Realizing it didn't work, she panics, thinking the scroll must be defective, while a swindler mutters that she's crazy. The swindlers mock her, wondering aloud if there's an asylum nearby. Mortified, Latte wails over her ruined exit and her defective scroll. A comically pained expression captures her anguish over the fake scroll, with a note confirming it's still the same comic. Confused and hasty, she realizes she can't teleport home as a swindler declares it's time to teach her a lesson. The two swindlers laugh menacingly, vowing to make her pay for trying to fool them. Realizing she has only one teleport scroll left, she prepares to use it as a swindler lunges to punch her. Rip! As the man charges, Latte quickly tears her last scroll, surprised by his speed. A powerful whirlwind of blue magic immediately erupts around her. Whoosh! The magical energy swirls violently as the spell fully activates. Feeling the power, she points at the charging man, deciding she has to curse him. Whoosh! The magical wind blows one man's toupee off, shocking him and the shop owner. Crash! The spell violently ejects Latte from the shop, sending her crashing into a wall outside as she cries out in pain. Dazed and injured, she holds her bandaged head and wonders where she has ended up. Ta-da! She looks up in utter astonishment at an enormous, imposing tower, realizing it's the magic tower. Standing before the grand structure, she feels a sense of unease, as if she's trespassing. Whoosh! Looking up at the impossibly tall magic tower, Latte jokingly wonders if Goku is inside. She glumly calculates that it would take 3 grueling days and nights to get home by carriage. Groaning at the thought, she complains about how uncomfortable carriage rides are, until her butt becomes one with the chair. She cries, lamenting the wasted money on the useless Plaza teleport scroll. A thought strikes her as she realizes all the certified scrolls she uses are made in the Magic Tower. With a greedy grin, she decides to get a refund for her fake scroll since she's at the source. Standing before the massive, ornate gates, she wonders if she should simply knock. She waits in front of the imposing gates, which remain completely silent. Knock, knock. Doubting she'll be heard, she cautiously raises a hand to rap on the gate slide. A voice from within announces a guest as the gate slides open, and Latte gasps in surprise. Thud. The heavy golden gates swing open, revealing the entrance. Ta-da! An old wizard with a long white beard and a pointed hat appears in a cloud of smoke. Latte stares in wide-eyed recognition at the familiar-looking figure. She shouts in excitement, identifying him as Gandalf, who calmly asks what brings her here. Beaming, she gestures happily toward Gandalf. She explains she's here because a teleport scroll failed, and Gandalf looks on with a comically surprised expression. He thoughtfully examines the torn pieces of her failed scroll. Stating that this will take some time, Gandalf invites her to come inside the tower. Imagining she's on a grand journey, Latte quietly follows Gandalf inside the Magic Tower. She happily follows him, excited by the prospect of a difficult, magic-related problem. He gently guides her toward a seat, telling her to be careful. Her eyes sparkle with awe as she gazes at a magnificent, ornate chair. Slip. She happily settles into the chair, declaring that chairs are science. Gushing about how luxurious her butt feels, she is brought back to the topic by Gandalf, who asks if her scroll malfunctioned. Nod. She confirms it, and he explains she must wait for the master, who is currently out, to check it. Confused, she asks who the master is. She realizes with dawning horror that the master must be Arwen, and panics at the thought of him coming here. She nervously asks if the master of the tower usually handles these things, and Gandalf admits it's not normal. He explains that only the master can truly differentiate between a scroll that had magic and malfunctioned versus one that never had it. Understanding now, Latte realizes the refund process is far more complicated than she had anticipated. She recalls that in the original novel, Arwen was described as the genius of the century. Despite wandering the Esbanda residence, she's never met him, but now a confrontation seems inevitable. She never imagined her first meeting with Arwen would be at the Magic Tower of all places. She worries about meeting him without Ibelin there to act as a buffer. Imagining Arwen looming over her and ordering her to die, she reassures herself he wouldn't kill someone without reason. Resolving to be obedient, she plans to avoid a fight while Gandalf reassures Miss Rose they don't suspect tampering from a valuable customer. He smiles warmly as he excuses himself to call the master of the tower. Latte briefly wonders how he knew her alias was Rose, but quickly decides the Magic Tower must keep good customer records. A woman in a witch's hat offers her cookies while she waits, and Latte calmly accepts the surveillance society she's in. Her eyes glitter with joy as she admires the colorful, shiny cookies that seem to call out, "Eat me." Happily munching, she concludes that any place with free food, like the Magic Tower, is a good place. Munch munch. As she enjoys her snack, convinced Arwen will take his time, a swirl of blue magic erupts in the room. Pop Arwen suddenly appears before her, asking if she's the dear customer, catching her with her mouth full. Toss. Startled by his sudden arrival, she yelps and reflexively throws her cookie into the air. Crack. The cookie shatters midair as she and a stone-faced Arwen watch. Ah! Mortified, she realizes she threw the precious cookie out of sheer shock. Crumble. As the cookie turns to dust, Latte fears it's a grim omen for her own future. Surrounded by a shimmering blue aura, Arwen stands impassively as the cookie dust settles. Staring at Arwen, Latte panics, wondering if he's already contemplating how to kill her. Arwen reveals he came because he was informed his 1 million gold customer had arrived. Pont. An exhausted old wizard stands behind Arwen, who looks on with a stoic expression. Latte remembers someone was going to call Arwen, and realizes he must have come immediately upon receiving the message. The wizard nervously comments on how fast Arwen arrived, but Arwen coldly reminds him that he was told to hurry, leaving the wizard dejected. He tells Arwen not to be so mean to old Gandalf. Latte internally gushes over how handsome Arwen is, even when he's sighing. With a charming smile, Arwen asks if it's a coincidence that Latte is the famous 1 million gold customer. Latte is left utterly speechless by the sudden revelation. Gandalf pleads with his master to show respect to such an important customer, but Arwen coolly asks if he's ever respected a customer before. Latte reassures herself that his rude demeanor is normal, but is then caught off guard when Arwen directly asks if she wants him to treat her like a customer. Arwen smiles warmly, gently prompting her to tell him if she wants special treatment. Flustered by his pretty smile, Latte is at a complete loss for words. Crumble! Arwen casually tosses a cookie at Latte, who notes with annoyance that he just threw it at her. Deciding to seize the opportunity, Latte joyfully accepts his offer, demanding very special treatment. As Arwen smirks, Gandalf looks horrified, leading Latte to wonder if special treatment is a code word for murder. Shocked, Latte notes that Gandalf's terrified expression is starting to make her genuinely worried. Arwen cheerfully tells his dear customer not to worry because he won't kill her, then adds that he probably won't, causing Latte to have a comedic nosebleed. Nod. Latte calmly concludes that special treatment just means she'll be spared, while a confused Gandalf asks Arwen what changed his mind. Arwen simply states it's because she's funny, making Latte wonder if he remembers her as Ebelin's friend rather than as a customer. Arwen clarifies that he likes her because funny customers are precious, leaving Latte completely baffled by his logic. Startled, Latte has a flash of insight, pointing at Gandalf and exclaiming that he was the one who gave her the scroll. Arwen explains that the scroll was his payment for the show she put on, and Latte finally understands the situation. Remembering her embarrassing performance, Latte realizes the teleport scroll was Arwen's donation to watch her act, and she dryly calls him generous. Arwen presents a damaged scroll, identifying it as the defective one he mentioned in his message. Rip. To Latte's surprise, Arwen tears the defective scroll in half. Sizzle. The scroll fragments burst into magical flames as Latte screams that he just destroyed her evidence. Arwen furiously rants about the incompetence of the scroll's creator, calling them a nitwit who can't even contain mana in paper. Latte privately muses that his critique is only valid by his own genius standards. Swearing revenge, Arwen vows to teach the creator a lesson, but Latte quickly tells him to hold on. Flash, a swirling pillar of blue magic materializes in the room as Gandalf watches in awe. Latte is amused to see Gandalf looking at his bully, Arwen, with such profound respect in his eyes. Flash Arwen reappears in a dazzling pose, holding a newly crafted scroll. That's a neat trick if I ever saw one. I'm afraid that might be a bit beyond my capabilities. Maybe something simpler like a magic card trick. Would you like to play a game of cards instead? Latte watches in amazement, noting that Arwen can use powerful magic without even lifting a finger. With eyes sparkling with respect, Gandalf stares in awe at Arwen's display of power. Arwen calmly hands the newly made scrolls to a surprised Latte, addressing her as, quote, dear customer. He explains the coordinates are set near the Ectry residence, ensuring he'd know the address of Rose. Gandalf stares in disbelief, asking Arwen if he really just made the scroll, to which he casually replies, yeah. Latte quietly wonders if making a magic scroll that quickly isn't normal. Tremble. A distraught Gandalf complains that Arwen should make the scrolls himself if it's so easy for him, explaining that it takes his team a full day of hard work to make one. Arwen coldly retorts that their incompetence is precisely why he's forcing them to train and use more mana. Mumble. As Latte finds the scene difficult to watch, Arwen ruthlessly asks Gandalf if he learned magic in his sleep. Whimper. Arwen's harsh words bring Gandalf to tears, and Latte rushes to his side, scolding Arwen for making the old man cry. Latte yells at Arwen for bullying an old man with little time left, which makes Gandalf accept his fate. She immediately regrets her words. Arwen deadpans that Gandalf is 25, leaving Latte utterly shocked and confused. Doubting his words, Latte thinks that Gandalf looks at least 70 years old. She studies his wrinkles and white hair, concluding that he doesn't just look older, he looks ancient. Arwen recounts Gandalf's tragic backstory. He accidentally activated a magic circle, summoning a demon that cursed him with old age. To make matters worse, the circle then vanished, leaving him in despair. Wearing comical 3D glasses, Latte remarks that it's a great show and feels deeply for poor Gandalf. Arwen explains that Gandalf now works at the Magic Tower, researching how to recreate the Lost Circle, and Latte acknowledges that she understands. Latte turns to Arwen and asks if even a magician as powerful as him is unable to dispel the curse. With a serious expression, Arwen confirms that he cannot break the curse. Chuckle. Arwen confirms he could kill Gandalf, but won't, explaining he's a good worker, as a shocked Latte questions him. Disgusted by his casual cruelty, Latte internally declares that Arwen is the worst. She sadly pities Gandalf, thinking his future working for Arwen looks bleak. Holding up a new scroll, she thanks Arwen for the replacement. Halt! As she's about to use it to go home, Arwen's hand suddenly stops her. She looks up in confusion as he holds her hand, wondering why he's stopping her from using the scroll. Latte comically warns Arwen not to catch her, but then imagines him chasing her, only if she were a runaway minor he could whip, concluding she'd rather not be one. Arwen finds her muttering funny, making her think he sees her as a clown. Grab. Smiling, Arwen takes her hand, offering a reward for your effort. Swirl. He pulls her into his arms and begins to teleport, leaving her stunned and asking what reward he means. Tap. They instantly reappear outside, and she cries out in surprise as he lets go of her hand. She looks up and happily realizes they have arrived near her house. Arwen explains that scrolls and teleportation are blocked inside the magic tower by the previous master. Latte has a moment of realization, understanding now why he stopped her from using the scroll earlier. Seeing his smug look, she nervously asks him what kind of magic he just used. She internally fumes at his arrogant expression, thinking she would have punched him if he were her boss. With a cheerful bye, a tiny Arwen waves and disappears, leaving a monstrously annoyed Latte behind. Annoyed, Latte realizes Arwen's gesture was just a way to make her buy more scrolls, comparing herself to a bank with a monthly subscription to the magic tower. Squeeze. She clenches her fist, proudly declaring herself a sidekick, personally sent home by the Tower Master. She notes he didn't hesitate to grab her hand, but knows she is as insignificant as a stone on the street to him. As she reflects, she realizes she wasn't dizzy either, and wonders if his magic is so smooth because he's a genius. Splash. Back home, she steps into a relaxing bath. She daydreams happily, realizing that with Arwen's perfect teleportation, she could travel the world without any side effects. Knock. While she's relaxing, a voice calls for her from outside the door. A maid peeks into the room, looking surprised to find her there. Now in her nightgown, Latte turns from the sink and asks if she has a guest. In a preview, a mysterious visitor is shown to be looking for Latte. The maid confirms that a guest has arrived for her. Latte wonders aloud, surprised that someone has come to see her. Slip. She walks out of the bathroom, curious about her visitor's identity. A familiar voice calls her name, and Latte turns in surprise to see Ibelin. Over tea, Ibelin explains that his grace brought her, prompting Latte to ask how she got there. Ibelin expresses her worry after their sudden separation and asks if Latte was hurt. Latte smiles, deducing that Ibelin must have made a grumpy Kenneth bring her all the way there. Ibelin relays that his grace said Latte was fine, but she wanted to check for herself, making Latte internally question Kenneth's definition of fine. Trying to act cool, Latte dismisses Ibelin's concerns, a response she knows would likely annoy her. Deciding to mess with Kenneth, Latte hints that something did happen, prompting a curious Ibelin to ask for details. Latte spins a wild, exaggerated tale of flying, collapsing, running in fear, and hearing curses, carefully omitting that she wasn't the one doing most of it, which leaves Ibelin horrified on her behalf. Committed to her act, Latte mentally channels her inner, pitiful character, looking completely dejected. Fired up with righteous anger, Ibelin declares that she must say something about this. While Latte feigns concern, a fierce, fiery aura surrounds Ibelin as she prepares for battle. Looking like a warrior, Ibelin tells Latte to leave everything to her and get some rest. Latte happily sends the determined Ibelin off, finding the situation amusing and wishing her luck. Clatter. Alone now, she settles in with a cup of tea. Munch munch. She enjoys some sweet berries while she waits. Laughing about her prank on Kenneth, she sticks out her blueberry-stained tongue just as another knock sounds at her door. The maid appears once more to announce another guest, catching Latte by surprise. Munch. Popping another berry in her mouth, she wonders if it's a holiday with all these visitors. She waddles down the hall, thinking her nanny would be horrified to see her running. Reaching the room, she stops in her tracks, utterly stunned by who she sees. Her surprise visitor is a young boy with a monocle, who cheerfully calls out her name. Slam. Latte tries to shut the door on him, but he frantically begs her not to leave. Stomp, stomp. He giggles happily as she walks away from him in a huff. Slump. Latte collapses into a chair, asking why he came in person, while he cheekily asks if she needs an R-rated story written and pushes a drink toward her. She asks what he wants, addressing him as Olsel, who mysteriously replies that it's about time. Latte recalls that he only visits in person for urgent or dangerous matters, like requests for R-rated stories, using his relative's name Olsel as a cover. She imagines herself at a glamorous book signing, prompting the question, A fan meeting? Olsel excitedly rambles about meeting fans who love her book, as Latte marvels that such events happen here. He gleefully announces that the fan meeting is tomorrow, and she absent-mindedly nods in agreement. Furious, Latte grabs Olsel by the collar and yells at him, but he nervously explains that the short notice was unexpected for them too. Twirl. Olsel playfully dodges the question of the location, much to Latte's growing annoyance. She demands he stop wasting time and tell her, and he finally reveals the location is in Edgy. Latte stares in disbelief, repeating the name Edgy as Olsel continues to twirl playfully. She angrily asks if he thinks she's a time traveler, pointing out that Edgy is more than a week's journey away. Olsel cheerfully explains that the hosts have provided teleportation scrolls for instant travel to and from the event. Stunned, she realizes this means they are providing multiple, incredibly expensive scrolls for her. Flip, flip, flip. Mentally calculating the immense cost, she wonders if the host is a millionaire's daughter or a great merchant. Olsel whispers that the host's identity is a secret, but the message was delivered by a knight. Latte ponders this new information, realizing that anyone who can command a knight must be a very powerful noble. Snap! A wide grin spreads across her face as she proudly declares that her fans are on a completely different level. A premium hardbound book is shown as she marvels at the unexpected scale of the fan meeting. Olsel eagerly asks if she'll attend, while Latte questions why such an important event is being held in the remote countryside. Ruffle, ruffle. Resigned to her duty, she pats his head and agrees that a job is a job. Acknowledging her own curiosity, she decides to go, and the scene shifts to a quiet house under a starry night sky. Tucked into bed for the night, she wonders what one even talks about at a fan meeting. The story shifts to introduce a new character, Arabrock, who works at the Magic Tower. A narration explains the superstition that shaking one's leg at the table is unlucky, as a cloaked figure does just that. Others at the table react with disgust, exclaiming that with Arabrock there, they have no luck to lose anyway. It's explained that due to his perpetual bad luck, Arabrock was able to enjoy the benefits of old age while still young. A flashback shows a young Arabrock performing magic for other children, revealing he was a talented magician who prospered for a time. The narration reveals he was cursed to look like an old man, unable to even call his mother or sisters by their proper titles. Shake. After 3 years at the Magic Tower, he trembles with despair. Deeply depressed, Arabrock clutches his hands together, thinking only of his desire to go home. Flutter. A man with brilliant blue wings appears, coldly asking who is going to die today and ordering them to come forward. Arwen declares it makes no difference to him if he kills one or all of them, as Arabrock and his companions look on in terror. His piercing red eyes narrow as he says, "That's great." A man and woman frantically confess that someone named Bishat made the faulty scroll, quickly adding that he's on vacation. Arwen asks where Bishat went, and they nervously stammer that he went to the countryside. Snap. Arwen announces that they will all be going on a 2-day vacation as well. Flash. The magicians cry out in shock as Arwen teleports them away in swirling blue portals. Arwen points at a terrified Arabrock, sarcastically complimenting his recent research efforts. But Arabrock denies it. Darn it, Arabrock screams in anguish, knowing what is about to happen to him. Whoosh. The narration explains this is how Arabrock arrived at his destination, being unceremoniously dropped into a dark forest. Tremble. He shivers in a desolate, terrifying landscape, realizing Arwen's vacation was a collective punishment. The conclusion is stark. The vacation given by Arwen was actually a vacation to hell. The scene transitions with a warm, happy memory of Latte laughing with her loved ones. Back in the present, Latte asks a shopkeeper the price of a pair of metal tongs and considers buying them for 1 silver. Rustle. As she takes out her coin purse, she thinks that the postponed fan meeting has given her some welcome time for shopping. She buys the tongs, noting how they remind her of a tool she used in her past life as Kim Hyejung. Clack, clack. She fondly recalls using identical tongs to dispose of dead cockroaches in her old apartment. She pictures a triumphant caterpillar celebrating its bodily functions, a strangely proud memory. Shake, shake. Thinking of the pests, she concludes that compared to certain people, cockroaches are nothing. Shiver. She recoils at the squeaking memory, gripping her newly acquired tongs for comfort. Glance. Deciding she still has time, Latte happily continues her walk through town. She takes in the sights, noticing that the street is lined with many restaurants. Whoosh! A sharp, intense gaze watches her from afar as a presence rushes past. Halt. She stops dead in her tracks, startled by a sudden feeling. Clack. A firm hand grabs her shoulder from behind, causing her to look up in complete shock. Devastated, she internally laments her terrible luck for such an unwelcome coincidence. She inwardly groans upon recognizing Kenneth, who demands to know why she is there. Annoyed at her misfortune, Latte wishes she had just stayed in the shops. She boldly turns his question back on him, asking why he is in town. Crack, crack. She suddenly remembers turning Ibelin into a fiery warrior just the day before. Kenneth gripes about his unwanted title and declares her presence annoying. Kenneth looks utterly perplexed by her, leaving Latte just as confused by his reaction. Despite the situation, she can't help but make a sarcastic internal comment about his good looks. He accuses her of being a creepy stalker, which she awkwardly finds preferable to his usual death threats. Her brief relief fades as she bristles at being called a stalker once again. She tries to read his expression, noting his tiresome gaze lacks its usual murderous anger. Scratch, scratch. He scratches his cheek in a moment of mild annoyance. Latte realizes he must not have returned home to face the wrathful Ibelin yet. Step, walks away, scratching his ear and completely ignoring her. He continues to ignore her, forcing her to falter as she tries to get his attention. Halt. She reaches out to grab him but stops herself, remembering his hatred of being touched. Fearing his wrath if she touches him, she suddenly thinks of another way to stop him. In a preview, a determined Latte vows she won't let Kenneth go, her expression one of pure obsession. He continues to pointedly ignore her as he walks away, leaving her struggling to call out. Recalling his hatred for physical contact, she halts her hand just in time as a new idea strikes. With grim determination, she watches his retreating back, ready to execute her new plan. She whips out the metal tongs and clamps them onto his sleeve, leaving a confused Kenneth to stare back. Completely baffled by the tongs on his arm, he can only stammer, "What?" Latte grins, thinking to herself that tongs are, after all, for picking up trash. She mentally congratulates herself for buying the tongs, delighted by how useful they've become. She offers a sweet, fake apology for her impulsive action, insisting she has something important to say. As she begins to explain, he interrupts with a gentle smile, praising her method of getting his attention. He admits that her approach is to his liking, leaving a stunned Latte utterly speechless. The scene briefly shifts to an image of a traditional romantic couple in an embrace. She realizes her attempt to treat him like a cockroach has hilariously backfired as he took it as a sign of respect. Now willing to listen, he asks what she wanted to say, but she's too shocked to answer. With a soft and gentle expression, Kenneth encourages her to speak, promising he's listening. Wiggle, wiggle. Stunned by his sudden change, she compares his new sweet demeanor to a soft pudding. Bounce, bounce. The absurd mental image of pudding Kenneth makes her internally shriek. Completely flustered by his gentle attitude, she can barely manage to address him. Clack, clack. Wielding her tongs defensively, she nervously tries to deny being a stalker. She looks up in wonder, questioning if this calm and reasonable interaction is even real. Dazed, she watches him start to leave again, utterly surprised by the entire encounter. Woozy, still reeling from the bizarre meeting, she weakly questions if any of it truly happened. Squeeze. Reflecting on Kenneth's dramatic change in attitude, Latte nervously grips her tongs. With a sparkling, gentle smile, Kenneth tells her that he believes her. Latte is utterly shocked, wondering if this kind person is even Kenneth anymore. Glance. She steals a curious and slightly flustered look at him. In a fantasy sequence, Latte imagines herself as a warrior wielding her tongs as a, quote, one silver holy sword, dubbing it the Tong Sword. She smiles with satisfaction, admiring her impromptu weapon. Latte simulates a past memory to understand Kenneth's reaction, picturing herself as a child facing a cricket she despises as it jumps toward her. Jump, jump. The imaginary cricket leaps menacingly before something grabs her leg, causing her to scream in terror. Flutter. She sees it was only a leaf, and reasons the cricket must have hidden out of respect. Touched, the memory moves her to tears as she concludes the cricket was respectful and gentle for not touching her directly. Nod, back in the present, Latte holds her tongs, now understanding they are a symbol of respect and the reason for Kenneth's change. She feels a wave of relief, realizing her neck is safe, for now, even without Ibellin's protection. A triumphant image shows a joyous Latte, with both Kenneth and Arwen smiling in the background. Feeling accomplished, Latte happily decides it is finally time to go eat. A young boy urgently calls out to her as he runs in her direction. She recognizes him as Book and wonders what's wrong. Out of breath, Book catches up to her, and Latte advises him to calm down and breathe. He urgently informs her that the fan meeting participants are about to arrive. Surprised that it is already time, Latte listens as he addresses her as Miss Rose. Russell. Book explains that since the fan meeting is anonymous, she will need something he brought for her. He presents her with a long, elaborate pink wig. Latte is stunned by the wig's softness, and even more shocked when he reveals it costs 10 gold. Toss. Annoyed by his spending, Latte grumbles about him earning so much money, but Book cheerfully credits her for his success. A detailed shot showcases the elegant, curly pink wig. Scrunch. As Latte adjusts the wig, Book eagerly asks for her opinion. Arriving at a grand mansion, Latte narrates that she and Book got her completely ready. She and Book ascend the stairs of the mansion where her fan meeting will be held. They arrive in a lavish dining room, and Book confirms that this is the place. A preview for the next episode shows a masked Latte as Book whispers a secret about the meeting. Book announces their arrival in the grand dining room, addressing her as Miss Rose. Latte's eyes are drawn to a magnificent chair adorned with red roses, which she assumes is hers. Whirr! A swirl of blue magic envelops the room, and as Latte questions the phenomenon, Book identifies it as teleportation magic. Masked individuals begin to materialize in the room as her fans start to arrive. Whisper. Brooke points out a knight who had previously visited their publication. More fans appear via teleportation, and Latte has a moment of realization. Erg! Two of the newly arrived fans look nauseous, and Latte silently sympathizes with their post-teleport sickness. Click-clack. A woman in an ornate white mask begins walking purposefully toward Latte and Book. Book watches her approach, wondering if the wealthy-looking woman is the host or from a noble family. The masked woman greets Lady Rose, expressing her excitement at finally meeting her in person. The eyes beneath the mask curve into a gentle, welcoming smile. Latte studies the woman's light green eyes, noting they are a different shade than Ibellin's. Charmed by the woman's elegant voice, Latte listens as she suggests they all sit down and talk. Latte internally agrees, realizing the fan meeting can't begin until everyone is seated. After taking her seat, Latte leisurely observes the woman sitting across from her, flanked by 2 guards. Noting the woman's prestigious air, Latte wonders if she is truly one of her fans. She confirms her suspicion that the ornate rose-covered seat is indeed meant for her. Feeling a surge of nervousness, Latte officially declares the fan meeting has begun. She anxiously tries to think of what to say to start the conversation. The woman breaks the silence, stating that she has read all of Lady Rose's books. She then presents a book, asking if Latte would be willing to sign it for her. Latte is impressed by the woman's elegance as she hands over the book, her curiosity about her identity growing. Inspired by the first fan, others eagerly present their own copies of the book for an autograph. A book is opened to a fresh, blank page, ready to be signed. Latte beams with excitement, relishing the surreal moment of signing her own published books. Scribble. As Latte signs Cash, the fans marvel at her fluency in English, while she internally giggles that she's just writing down her wishes. Taking charge of the meeting, Latte thanks everyone and asks which of her books they'd like to discuss. The fans excitedly request to talk about the newest book, expressing their keen interest in the Royal Knights. Nod. The mood grows more animated as another fan voices their interest, and Latte happily agrees. One fan passionately quotes a specific line, and the discussion quickly evolves from favorite works to favorite couples and scenes. Latte is deeply impressed, realizing her fans have analyzed her work in great detail as they reenact a scene. She mentally praises her fans as professionals for having memorized all the lines, picturing another racy scene from her novel. Latte notes with amusement that the guards accompanying the woman remain completely serious and unfazed by the passionate discussion. She is absolutely delighted, soaking in the enthusiastic energy of her dedicated fan base. Caught up in the moment, the fans shout in unison, asking her to release their desire. Nod. The woman in the ornate white mask addresses Latte as Lady Rose, who nods back, feeling a swell of pride. The woman reveals she has always wanted to thank Latte in person, leaving her puzzled. The room falls silent, as the woman simply answers yes, piquing everyone's curiosity. Sigh. After a brief, quiet moment, the woman prepares to share her personal story. She begins by recalling a hunting contest hosted by the royal family 2 years prior, in autumn. She explains that it was the first time she had heard that person would be attending the event. Latte finds the story strangely familiar, feeling as though she's heard it somewhere before. The woman continues, saying that everyone expected him to win and that she had become interested in him. Latte is shocked as a realization dawns on her. She hasn't just heard this story, she read it in the original novel. Her mind races as she connects the woman's platinum blonde hair to the character in the story. The woman admits that she decided to participate in the hunting contest just for a chance to see him. Latte has a stunning revelation. The woman is retelling the events of Roselia's story, a side story from The Flower of the Beast. The original story is shown, detailing Kenneth's first-time participation in the royal hunting contest 2 years ago. This event was the start of the royal princess's one-sided love story, which began after Kenneth won the competition. The woman recounts receiving a book as a gift from someone at a luncheon during the event. She explains that with time to spare before the hunt, she decided to start reading it. Confused, Latte wonders if this part of the tale was actually in the original story she read. She listens intently, finding it fascinating to hear the beginning of the princess's sad love story firsthand. Flicker, the woman recalls being so engrossed in a steamy scene that she wondered aloud if he had seen his body. A preview for the next episode questions what happened during the fated meeting between the princess and Kenneth. A shocked, chibi-style Latte reacts with wide-eyed disbelief. Tap, tap, scratch. The princess couldn't put the book down, prompting Latte to mentally demand, "What did you just say, princess?" Latte's internal monologue laments that the princess's love for Kenneth should be blossoming, not ending in heartache. Stab! She feels as though she's been stabbed by a trowel, utterly confused by this unexpected deviation from the plot. Latte reflects that the hunting competition was supposed to be the catalyst for the princess's unrequited love for Kenneth. She uses an Alice in Wonderland metaphor, explaining that the princess was supposed to follow the rabbit but didn't even attend the event. The analogy continues, comparing the situation to the rabbit hole being sealed, turning the adventure into Alice in Safetyland. Latte is stunned, remembering that the original novel's first volume ended with the princess and her love interest finally meeting face to face. As the woman passionately recites details from the book, Latte is amazed by her incredible memory. Latte makes a humorous mental comparison to a famous 90s Korean pop song about a wrongful meeting. Slap. The truth hits Latte. The princess skipped the pivotal hunting competition because she was too engrossed in reading Latte's book. She panics, wondering what this means for the famous hopeless love plotline that her readers loved. The woman explains that after reading all of Latte's works, she fell for a character named Bmore instead, leaving Latte to mourn the lost love story. The princess concludes that her original infatuation was merely a search for excitement, which she found in Lady Rose's novels instead. As the princess beams, a shocked Latte gets a nosebleed from the sheer absurdity of the situation. Latte realizes with grim certainty that the princess's pathetic, one-sided love story no longer exists in this world. She processes the massive implication. The original work has changed, and since the princess no longer loves Kenneth, all future plot points involving them are now erased. The princess clutches one of Latte's novels to her chest, a memory of the moment her perspective changed. She earnestly thanks Latte for what her books have done for her, leaving Latte flustered and speechless. The princess leans closer, insisting on thanking her, causing Latte's heart to pound as she internally marvels at the praise. Latte is completely stunned that her silly thoughts, put into words, have earned the admiration of such a beautiful woman. Deeply touched by the heartfelt gratitude, Latte feels a surge of emotion. Squeeze, filled with loyalty, Latte grabs the princess's hands and vows to write for the rest of her life, delighting the princess. Slam. The tender moment is shattered as the dining room doors are thrown open. The other fans turn in alarm, wondering who has just arrived and what the commotion is about. A crowd of ominous, cloaked figures storms into the room, surprising both Latte and the princess. Gather. As the masked group assembles, Latte grows concerned, wondering who they could be. Loom. The menacing black-clad intruders stand with glowing eyes, their presence filling the room with dread. Scratch, scratch. Latte nervously jokes to herself that they might be anti-fans angry about her character, Bmore, before dismissing the idea. The princess stands resolutely as her two guards draw their swords, ready to defend her. Clang! One of the guards expertly blocks an attack, and Latte internally compliments his impressive swordsmanship. Latte watches the unfolding chaos, puzzled by the princess's surprisingly calm demeanor. The princess turns toward a wide-eyed Latte, sensing her fear. With a confident smile, the princess assures Latte that everything will be fine. Lotta's plan to escape with a scroll is thwarted as a hand grabs her arm from behind. A desperate cry for help echoes through the room. TSK, the other fans ignore the screams, finding them noisy, while Latte listens with concern. A fan cries out in terror as Latte worries that the two guards are hopelessly outnumbered. Clunk. Latte is slammed against a wall amidst the escalating fight. Crack. While another fan casually eats, Latte looks up in horror as the ceiling begins to shatter above them. More masked assassins drop down from the broken ceiling, adding to the chaos. Latte's mind comically plays a song about raining men, but with assassins, as she realizes she's doomed. Halt. Pausing in the chaos, Latte realizes the situation is far more perilous than she initially thought. Another guest shouts for the princess. In a panic, a man in a beak mask confronts the princess, remarking on her bravery. Slide. A new figure appears behind the masked man as he continues to speak. Both Latte and the princess react with shock at the sudden appearance of another person. Latte and the princess stare intently at the unfolding scene. Latte recognizes the newcomer and has to stop herself from pointing at him. The masked man turns to confront the intruder, demanding to know who's there. Flutter, flutter. The newcomer draws his sword, and the startled masked man asks when he arrived. Rustle. Latte internally muses that a dramatic wind seems to follow the newcomer simply because he's a main love interest. The masked man stares in disbelief, stammering as he recognizes the formidable figure before him. He fearfully identifies the man as the legendary Black Reaper of the battlefield. A preview for the next episode shows Kenneth facing the assassins, hyping up his impending fight. The assassin repeats the man's notorious title, the Black Reaper of the battlefield. Shiver! Latte gets a chill hearing the dramatic nickname. Tremble. She cringes, admitting to herself that she had completely forgotten about Kenneth's over-the-top moniker. The princess now understands why she was told not to worry, realizing this must be the man she was expecting. Latte mentally gloats, thinking the assassin should be terrified now that a main love interest is on the scene. An assassin questions Kenneth's presence, but he reveals the rumor of his deployment was a lie spread on purpose. Oh no. The masked leader mockingly presents Kenneth with a video game-style choice menu where every option is death. The menu mockingly adds a fifth, even more gruesome option as the leader questions what choice Kenneth has. Glance. The masked leader nervously looks back at Kenneth, uncertain of his next move. Scan. As the leader's eyes dart around, Latte correctly guesses his intention, to find a hostage. Pose. The assassins strike dramatic poses as Latte, an expert in romance tropes, predicts their next move. Relying on her genre savvy, Latte is certain the assassins will follow the classic trope and target the princess. An assassin grabs Latte and holds a knife to her, demanding Kenneth throw down his weapon. Pale. Latte internally panics, wondering why, out of everyone in the room, she had to be the one taken hostage. Realizing her own insignificance, Latte internally mocks the assassin for choosing the most worthless hostage possible. Cough. In a grimly funny thought, Latte imagines Kenneth stabbing through the assassin to get to her, wondering if this is her end. Annoyed, Latte yells at the masked man, telling him to fulfill his death wish by himself. Kenneth pauses, realizing that since he's disguised with a wig and mask, he doesn't need to hold back. Latte smirks, thinking that since no one knows who she is, she doesn't have to bother playing the part of a helpless hostage. Step, step. Kenneth strides forward confidently. Drop. With a cry of pain, the assassin suddenly drops his knife. Latte watches in awe, impressed by how quickly Kenneth disarmed the man by striking his wrist with the sword's handle. As the assassin collapses in agony, Latte decides to add insult to injury and stomp on the fallen blade. Stomp, stomp. Dash. Triumphant, Latte hums as she runs away after her successful battle against the knife. Slap. The leader watches in horror as his hostage plan fails and Kenneth effortlessly defeats another of his men, realizing Duke Kenneth is too strong. Reach. The desperate leader pulls out a small, glowing object, calling it his last hope. Latte recognizes his posture, cheekily noting that she makes the same face when she's running away from a mess. Before the leader can finish his threat, Latte brightly interrupts, telling him he shouldn't say that. The leader's vow to return is cut short by a scream as Kenneth strikes him down from behind. A new woman appears, flashing a peace sign and stating that only a person named Ibelin is allowed to use that particular skill. With the assassins now leaderless and defeated, the narrator confirms that peace returned with Kenneth's arrival. Kenneth stands perfectly still amidst the aftermath, his expression impassive. A gentle breeze mysteriously begins to blow, fluttering through his dark hair. Latte mentally gawks at the perfect male lead effect, comically imagining a giant fan labeled "Breeze for Handsome Men." Flutter, flutter. She watches him, internally admitting that he looks cool no matter what he does. Rustle. The dramatic breeze suddenly stops, and Latte notices immediately. Two of the other fans, with hearts in their eyes, swoon over the Duke, as Latte notes that love is clearly in the air. The princess, now wearing a white feathered mask, steps forward to thank Duke Kenneth for his assistance. Latte looks over the unconscious bodies, surprised to see they've all just fainted with no blood spilled. Kenneth calmly informs her that they will remain asleep for a very long time. Reach. The princess elegantly reaches for her mask. Beam. She removes her mask, her beauty dazzling as she asks Lady Rose if she is all right. Latte is stunned, speechless, as the princess leans in incredibly close to check on her. Shake, shake. Flustered, Latte vigorously shakes her hands, assuring the princess that she's fine and it was over in a flash. The princess explains the meeting was a ruse to lure out an anti-imperial group and apologizes for the danger. She then confesses that her desire to meet Latte was genuine, no matter what it took to arrange it. Badam? Latte's heart pounds as her mind comically misinterprets the princess's intense words as a romantic confession. Wipe. Confused by the turn of events, Latte wipes her face and assures the princess that the honor is all hers. As a blonde man appears, Latte notes that the original story's prince seems to be becoming even more insignificant. Seeing the unmasked princess, Latte wonders if she should take off her own mask as well. Latte approaches Kenneth to thank him for saving her, but he brushes it off as nothing. She muses that for the infamous Black Reaper, a few assassins really were nothing to worry about. Latte daydreams about teasing Kenneth over his dramatic nickname, imagining herself calling him the Yellow Reaper of Bymore. As knights round up the defeated assassins, the narrator admits that Kenneth was undeniably cool. A preview for the next episode teases Latte's next encounter, questioning who she will meet this time. The other fans swoon over Kenneth's performance and his sudden disappearance, leaving Latte bewildered. Murmur, murmur. The fans continue to gush, with one asking for popcorn to better enjoy the show. Latte is taken aback by the intensity of two male fans, who have bloody noses but look thrilled. Glance. Latte cautiously eyes one of the enthusiastic men. The fan, wiping blood from his face, eagerly asks Latte if she is also a member of Kenneth's fan club. The princess suggests that they should probably end the meeting now, to the agreement of her own fans. Dejected, Latte accepts that she has lost and her fan meeting has become Kenneth's. The princess calls out her name, Rose. The princess offers Latte a handkerchief, graciously inviting her to come and see her again. A new scene introduces a young noblewoman with blonde hair, who offers a gentle and serene smile. She speaks to a masked Latte, correctly guessing that she must be a noble. She compliments Latte's elegant posture, contrasting it with another guest who comically cries out while being swatted for poor walking. Latte internally reflects that she's well versed in the lessons her original self took, feeling a bit proud. Amused by the attention, Latte thinks to herself that she's become surprisingly popular, leaving the noblewoman momentarily confused. Latte's expression turns greedy as she clutches the royal handkerchief, wondering how much money it's worth. Clap, clap. A young attendant with glasses praises Latte, declaring her actions are exactly what he'd expect, as she thinks her side character moment has arrived. Latte turns to the attendant, confused by his sudden praise, and asks him why. He worriedly brings up the knife that was just at her throat, but Latte casually dismisses it as if it were nothing. Suddenly annoyed, Latte snaps at the attendant, questioning why he's only asking about the danger now. The attendant meekly apologizes, as Latte chides him for the delayed concern. Latte reassures herself that she's fine, reflecting that without Kenneth, she would have foolishly trusted her faulty escape scrolls. She ponders the difficulty of living as a character inside a novel, a complicated thought she prefers to avoid. Changing the subject, Latte asks the attendant what seems to be bothering him. As she tries to hurry him along, he miserably confesses that he has lost something. The attendant wails that he lost the tongs, and Latte is baffled, asking if he means the, quote, sacred steel tongs. Latte suddenly recalls picking up the tongs herself and giving them to someone named Book while putting on her wig, having forgotten all about it. Book quickly dismisses his worries and grabs Latte's hand, telling her to follow him up a staircase. He announces with determination that they are now going on a gourmet tour. Thrilled, Latte daydreams about a glorious feast, her mind set on the motto, eating comes first. Walking outside a manor, Latte asks Book if the ladies from the meeting recommended any nearby restaurants. Book informs her of a specialty cheese shop in the area, and Latte responds with delight. Latte complains about being famished, but as a silver-haired man appears, she playfully says she's not, and he tells her to pretend. Glance. The man looks over at Latte with a confident smirk. He politely addresses her as dear customer, catching her attention. Latte's eyes spin as she recognizes the man as Arwen, internally panicking that this place is a hot spot for main characters. Latte nervously says the situation is odd, and Arwen teasingly asks if she's referring to her own face. As Arwen laughs, Latte pouts at his rudeness before he asks what she's doing there. Latte starts to explain she was meeting someone when Brooke suddenly gasps, drawing Arwen's attention to something else. Latte asks who the newcomer is as Arwen firmly grabs a disheveled man in a red cloak. She looks closer at the struggling figure, wondering if it's a man. The man looks up with a weak expression as Latte observes that he seems to still be alive. He desperately begs for help, but Latte comically dismisses him, thinking she's not a charity organization. Arwen calmly identifies the captive man as Bishot. He then reveals that Bishot is the very person who made the faulty magic scroll she had complained about. Latte smiles brightly, asking Arwen not to kill him too painfully, a comment that leaves Book utterly shocked. Her smile vanishes as the fact sinks in, and she wonders what she should do now. Shove! Arwen pushes the terrified Bishot toward Latte, telling her that since she bought the scrolls, she should be the one to decide his punishment. Bishot turns to Latte with a desperate, pleading expression. Latte hesitantly asks if she can truly decide his fate. Arwen confirms her authority in the matter, causing Bishot to cry out for help in terror. Latte puts a hand to her chin, thoughtfully considering the perfect punishment. As Bishot waits nervously, Latte exclaims that she has an idea: 1 month of work without any pay. She points forward with a triumphant grin, clearly satisfied with her verdict. A preview for the next episode questions what will happen to the magician Bishot now that Arwen has brought him to Latte. Bishot stares in apprehension as Latte declares that she's figured out his punishment. With a victorious smile, Latte points decisively, ready to deliver her sentence. She slyly adds a crucial detail to herself. All the profits from his labor will go directly into her pocket. Arwen and Bishot are left completely speechless by her declaration. Fidget. Latte excitedly clarifies that it will be harsh labor. Grin. Arwen flashes a satisfied, predatory smile. Toss. Arwen shoves Bishot forward, who stumbles with a cry of alarm. Bishot sweats, realizing he only suggested harsh labor because Arwen was there. Groan. Latte imagines men doing grueling mine work, wondering if that would be a suitable job for a magician. Arwen informs the terrified Bishot that for 1 month he will do exactly as Latte commands. Arwen coldly presents Bishot to a stunned Latte, declaring him her new slave. Flustered, Latte stammers in confusion, while Bishot smirks and Book looks bewildered. Latte comically laments this turn of events, imagining herself gaining more comrades in a parody of a famous manga. Arwen casually suggests that if she has no work for him, she can just make him wipe her feet. While Latte considers this, Bishot and Book awkwardly introduce themselves to each other. Latte daydreams about her sparkling feet, thinking how much better they'd feel being washed by a high-class laborer. Bishot eagerly asks if her decision is generous, and Latte can only reply that she is honored. Relieved, Bishot decides that being a noble slave is far better than working in a mine. When Latte asks for his name, Arwen tells her to call the magician whatever she wants. The magician tearfully introduces himself, stating his name is Bishat. Latte confirms her plan for harsh labor, as Arwen tells Bishat to return after the month is over before flicking his fingers. Crackle. Blue energy swirls around Arwen's hand as he prepares to depart. Slump. A dejected Bishat slides to the ground in defeat as Latte watches. Rube. Book worriedly asks what's happening, while Latte notes Bishat looks like he wants the world to end. Book questions why she took on such a person, but Latte tells him to argue with Arwen, who threw him at her. Book asks who Arwen was, musing that he looked like a fairy. Book's imagination comically pictures Arwen as a slender, winged fairy. He marvels at her pretty friend, but Latte clarifies that Arwen is the master of the magic tower. Recognizing the famous description of silver hair and red eyes, Book asks if he's well known. Book then points to Bishat, who Latte identifies as another magician from the magic tower. Gasp. Brooke reels back in utter shock at the revelation. Book gushes over how amazing Latte is for meeting so many important people, forcing her to tell him to get off. Bishat timidly approaches Latte, asking how he should address her from now on. She smiles and introduces herself as Latte Ektri, which Bishat eagerly accepts. Bishat insists on being formal out of respect for her friendship with the Tower Master. He adds that she also saved his life, prompting Latte to change the subject by inviting him to eat. Latte later asks Bishat if he is truly committed to working for her for a month. A look of terror crosses Bishat's face as he realizes the horrifying consequences if he ever found out. Tremble. Book shivers with fear, sensing the danger. Latte realizes from their reactions that Arwen's reputation is terrifyingly dark, concluding he's a psychopath. Shaking, Latte forces herself to stay calm in front of her two trembling companions. Pat, pat. After composing herself, Latte confidently tells Bishat that harsh labor is her specialty. She leans in to reassure Bishat with a wink, promising to protect him from Arwen if he slacks off. Bishat morbidly asks Book about coffin color trends, and Book offers to order one with him. After a great meal, Latte announces it's time to head home, arranging to meet at a nearby statue. Book and Bishat follow along, needing to gather mana for the trip. Sparkle. Latte looks at the now clean Bishat, thinking he looks like an honest magician. Latte steps into a glowing blue magic circle, ready for teleportation. Latte waves a cheerful goodbye to Brooke, jokingly telling him she hopes they never meet again. A preview for the next episode shows Latte arriving home, wondering if she can finally rest. Wham! Slam! Kick! A chaotic brawl erupts as Book and Bishat fight Latte over a sponsored item she's still wearing. Latte reflects on Arwen's skill, while Bishat recalls how easily Arwen tracked a fugitive, leading to a death threat from Arwen himself. Slam. Wham! Slap. Latte, caught in the middle of the fight, resolves to never cross Arwen in the future. After apologizing to a battered Book, Latte finally makes it home with Bishat, having safely arrived at their coordinates. Pent. Latte asks an exhausted Bishat if he used too much mana for the teleportation. A maid cheerfully welcomes Latte home, while Bishat coughs weakly beside her, startling Latte. Latte recognizes the maid as Esula, realizing this new development is bad as Bishat looks on in confusion. Latte internally panics, realizing she needs to stop Esula from saying anything scandalous. Dash. Esula runs toward the house, loudly announcing that Lady Latte has brought a man home. As murmurs spread, Latte dryly comments on Esula's human megaphone abilities, while Bishat remains puzzled. A man with a mustache dashes out in a panic, possessively shouting at Latte and demanding to know who Bishat is. Looking pale and gaunt, Latte tries to calmly explain that Bishat will be helping her for the next month. Thud. Bishat suddenly collapses, and Latte cries out his name in alarm as her shocked parents look on. The scene fades to black as Latte's explanation echoes. He will be helping her for a month. Latte cheerfully checks on a dazed Bishat, who weakly addresses her as Miss Latte. Bishat explains he overworked himself teleporting from the magic tower, making Latte wonder just how scary Arwen truly is. A blonde woman tells Latte to have Esula show Bishat to his room and to get him something to eat. After the commotion settles, Latte and Esula show a much happier Bishat to the room he'll be using. Bishat looks pleased with his accommodations, sincerely thanking Miss Latte. Latte and Esula stand together, as Latte thinks to herself that it is, of course, a good room. Latte reflects that her father wasn't overly suspicious and gave Bichat a warm welcome, befitting a guest. She smugly reminds herself that even though her father is welcoming him, she's the one who truly holds Bichat's life in her hands. Trot, trot. Finally alone, Latte happily skips toward her room, ready to rest at last. Ursula washes Latte's feet in a glowing basin, asking if the water is warm enough. Latte replies that it's perfect. Latte asks about her father's popcorn business, and Ursula reports that preparations are underway, though everyone is still very busy. Flop. A sudden thought makes Latte splash back into the water. Ursula mentions they plan to engrave a phrase on the store for good luck, piquing Latte's curiosity. While massaging Latte's foot, Ursula clarifies the phrase will go on the door or wall. Latte thoughtfully mulls over the idea of creating a catchy phrase to advertise popcorn. She imagines an enthusiastic man in a popcorn costume, concluding that an advertisement would be a great idea. Splash. After a moment of silence, Ursula nervously brings up the subject of the magician. Deciding to discuss the advertising phrase with her father later, Latte asks Ursula why she's interested in Bichat. CSK. Ursula's disdainful reaction makes Latte wonder if there's something wrong with Bichat. Ursula complains that he's an old man, but Latte corrects her, saying he's in his 20s. Ursula declares she likes younger men, to Latte's amusement, then excitedly asks if Bichat is good at magic since she saw him floating. Filled with excitement, Ursula asks if he can make fire with his hands, referencing a famous anime character. Nod. Latte smiles, realizing this is probably the first time Ursula has seen a real magician. Flash. Latte imagines a chibi version of Bichat creating a spark of fire and confirms he likely can. Sizzle. She quickly adds a caveat. However, he can't kill dragons with his fire. Ursula's expression immediately turns uninterested upon hearing this limitation. Grab. Ursula suddenly clutches Latte's arm with renewed determination. Ursula leans in conspiratorially, changing the subject with a sly, "So, by the way." Whimper. With a cute, pleading expression and a tiny hamster on her shoulder, Ursula makes her appeal, leaving Latte nervous. A preview for the next episode teases the confrontation, with Latte demanding to know what Ursula wants. Whimper. As a hamster watches, Ursula puts on her most pleading face, making Latte nervously ask what she wants. Ursula excitedly proclaims that she wants to see magic. Latte clarifies if she means fire shooting from his hands, and Ursula eagerly confirms. Burn, a terrified Bichat warns that using fire magic indoors could burn the house down and offers to do another trick instead. Latte reassures Ursula she was just joking and tells her to ask Bichat to perform outside in the garden or training hall. Overjoyed, Ursula agrees, and Latte tells her to just mention her name. Dash. Ursula runs off excitedly, as Latte muses that Bichat's first job has now been decided. Drip. Tap tap. Latte steps out of the footbath, her feet dripping as she looks for a towel. Admiring her feet, Latte reflects on how much prettier they are now compared to when she was Hyejung. Latte joyfully flops onto her bed, already making plans to visit someone named Ibelin tomorrow. Latte decides to meet Ibelin tomorrow to retract all the bad things she said about Kenneth. She ponders when the three main love interests, whom she calls Fish, began viewing each other as rivals. Latte muses that since Ibelin just arrived in the Empire, the real show is only now beginning. Putting on comical 3D glasses, she declares, popcorn mode on, excited to watch the drama unfold. As she drifts off to sleep, Latte recalls how blurry parts of the story suddenly became clear. The next morning, sunlight streams into the house as Latte sleepily starts to say good morning. She stretches awake with a yawn, then freezes in confusion at the sight before her. A horrifically gaunt Bichat looms over her, prompting Latte to scream his name and ask if he had a nightmare about Arwen. Trip. Bichat explains he couldn't sleep due to his depleted mana, flashing back to the maids relentlessly demanding magic tricks, and a woman named Grease asking him what they did. Pat. Latte comforts the traumatized Bichat, telling him he did a good job and asking him to understand. She explains it's the maid's first time seeing a live magician, causing Bichat to tremble as he realizes they must have seen many dead ones. Latte quickly points to a tiger skin rug and clarifies that she didn't mean it like that. Seeing his exhausted state, Latte helps Bichat up and suggests they get breakfast, to which he weakly agrees. Clatter. During a meal with her mother, Latte asks for permission to go out for the day. Her mother asks where she's headed, and Latte explains she's visiting the lady she mentioned before. Her mother agrees, telling her to be back by sunset. Her mother then asks if Bichat, the magician, will be accompanying her on the outing. Bichat's expression instantly brightens with a sly aha at the suggestion. Latte cheerfully invites Bichat along, and he enthusiastically agrees, rushing off to get ready in his room. Flutter, Latte dresses in what she considers a simple outfit for her meeting with Ibelin. Tap, she slips on her shoes, finalizing her preparations to leave the house. Latte wonders aloud if she should bring popcorn, just as a smiling Bichat appears right behind her. Holding a bag of popcorn, Latte hopes to meet one of the story's love interests and asks Bichat if he can teleport them. Bichat replies that while he can, using teleportation magic now would certainly kill him. Latte recoils in horror, imagining a gruesome teleportation accident, and vehemently refuses the idea. Nay. A pristine white horse appears, signaling their choice of safer, more conventional travel. Clip-clop, Latte and a happy Bichat sit together inside a carriage, beginning their journey. Clip-clop, their carriage makes its way through a quaint town street. Latte happily comments on the beautiful weather, while an arrow points out Bichat as the sidekick enjoying the view. The coachman urges the horse onward as they continue their trip through the town. The scene abruptly shifts to an explosive "what" against a dark, ornate background. Upon arrival, a maid informs a stunned Latte and Bichat that Lady Ibelin has already left. Latte panics, worrying that Ibelin might have gone to see Kenneth and wonders what to do. A sudden thought strikes Latte as she realizes something important about the story's progression. She deduces that if Ibelin is at the palace, she must be meeting the prince, which means Kenneth is her next stop. Latte feels a wave of relief, remembering it's a short trip from the royal restaurant to the palace. Inside the restaurant, Latte cheerfully serves food to Bichat, remarking on how good it smells. Stare. Spreading out a map, Latte points to a spot marked with popcorn and asks Bichat if he wants to try some. Bichat tries a piece of popcorn and confirms that it tastes good. Pleased, Latte enjoys some of the popcorn herself, holding the bag with a happy smile. The magnificent royal castle is shown, their next destination now clear. The view pans across the sprawling and impressive royal palace grounds. As they approach the palace, a weary Bichat asks Latte where they are going. She remembers that at the library, Ibelin will meet the prince, which leads to their first date. Trot. With renewed purpose, Latte hurries toward the palace library. She looks back and urges the exhausted, lagging Bichat to hurry up. Tremble. Bichat trembles weakly, and Latte surmises that he still hasn't recovered his magical energy. Showing concern, Latte tells him to find a place to rest within the palace while she handles things. Latte watches in surprise as Bichat suddenly sprints away, making her wonder if he was faking his fatigue. A maid with a broom looks back, asking for the library as if repeating a question she just heard. Full of hope, Latte thinks to herself that she just needs to turn the corner. Halt. Her path is suddenly blocked by a man in a formal uniform. Bow. Latte quickly recognizes Rondemio, the prince, and offers a formal greeting, surprised to have met him so soon. Latte brightly comments on her own nimbleness and questions what he meant by asking if they were in public. Latte has a flashback to the rabbit incident, suddenly remembering he told her to be less formal in the garden. Latte continues her over-the-top act of being blinded by his beauty, but Rondemio remains silent. Rondemio changes the subject, pointing to the bag Latte is holding and asking what it is. Rondemio looks at the popcorn with intrigue, remarking that he has never seen food like it before. Annoyed at being seen as just Ibelin's friend, Latte makes a disgruntled face. Disgusted. The mood shatters as Rondemio gives her a look of pure disgust, prompting Latte to yell at him to look at her. A preview for the next episode shows a happy Latte with Ibelin, teasing her arrival. Disgusted. Rondemio's look of revulsion continues as Latte demands his attention. Latte muses that Rondemio treated her like an odd pebble he briefly noticed before moving on.